Oh my god, she's using her model. What the balls? She's a VTuber. No freaking way. When did she get a VTuber model? Oh my god. Who is this? Who is this? What have you done to my PNG tuber? Oh my god. She's moving. What if I put my PNG on top of my head? What is this? Okay. I decided to do a Severance stream because I need the distraction badly. And also, I watched the new episode yesterday. And it was actually so sickening. not in like the oh my god, that is sickening way, but in the I felt nauseous. I felt terrible. I hated it. No, I didn't hate it. It was like one of the best episodes yet. But I felt so sick because it was so awful. And it's been stuck in my head. I like ranted to someone. Hi Presto! I rambled to someone in like Instagram DMs. I sent like message after message because they told me to spoil it for them. So I like recapped the whole episode. It was so gross. I was so upset. But it's in season 2, so obviously we won't get to the episode today. But oh my goodness. When season 2 is over, I'm definitely recapping season 2 too. Also, this episode was just so awful. So I was like, okay, I need to talk about season 1 without a prior announcement. I'll just do it because we love impulse. Actually, let me check if that person responded. No, I think I sent too much. They're like, I'll read that later. Okay, let me share my MS Paint. We're whipping out the MS Paint for this again. What the... Do I not have it as a source? Thank you for the stream streak! And thank you for stopping by. If you stop by, you stay forever. If you leave in stream, you leave IRL. Okay, MS Paint. We're whipping out MS Paint. For anyone new to yapping streams, I use MS Paint to like map out the characters. Okay, let me put the main characters first. What are you guys up to though? Monhun, let's go! Everyone's playing Monster Hunter. Maybe I should get on it. That's our main character. I had to put 2 of him because there's technically 2 of him. Size 12, maybe? Is that too small? Ah, my eye stings! I don't know why! I'm so excited. We can use words like "ini" now. Oh, how do I move it? Hello? Oh, there it is. Oh! How do I undo it? Okay, there we go. Time to paint. What a nightmare. Okay. What? I can't copy and paste? Alright, that's our main character. I'm gonna add her next right away because she's like the first person that appears in the episode. But I'll explain who they are later. Oops. How big is this? Oh, I see. Alright. Ellie. Okay, her name is Helly. Or all the severed people, they do like the first letter of their last name. I don't know why. I think it's like some kind of protocol thing, because the whole point is for them to be like really structured. My guy, Dylan. I should have set this up beforehand, but I was like, whatever. Dylan's so funny. What was his last name? Dylan G? Is that what they call him? Yeah, Dylan G. I'm gonna try not to spoil anything from season 2. I'm gonna get ahead of myself. Irving. I think it's Irv B or something. Yeah, B. My beloved. I adore him. Irving. Oops. I can barely see my keyboard right now. Okay. Who's the last person I should put for now? I think we need PD also. He kind of looks like Tom Cruise. Yeah, if you squint hard enough. What do they call it when they're like not severed? I forgot. Hello! Hi. It's like they're like kind of rehabilitated, but I forgot the word. Oh, reintegration. Okay. Reintegration. There's so many characters. I should have done this before. What's her face? Now I should do Mr. Milchick. This guy's so funny. He's like terrible. Like, he's really funny. This freaking photo of him with the fruit table is so funny. Image is too big. I like that guy, he's so funny. In like a awful way. Oh my god, how do I move you? Okay, there we go. Mr. Milchick and his fruit table. His smile's great. He's really funny. He's like, you just can't help but find him funny. Like, kind of one of those villains. Except he's not really a villain. I don't know how to describe it. I should put him in the middle, yeah. Like all the company people. Mr. Milchick, I believe. I'll just do Lumen. Mrs. Selvig? She's a big boss. Her acting was so good. She was like really scary. Severance is amazing. Did you see the new episode? I actually lost my mind. I genuinely felt so sick. Hell. I was like crying, throwing up. Oh, it made me nauseous. Oh my god. Yes! Okay, good. So I can talk to you about it. I was like, I need to talk to someone about this. It made me so ill. Was it Miss Selvig or Mrs.? I think it's Miss Selvig. Because they're supposed to be like, you know. It made me so sick. Oh. This poor girl, man. Free her! What are they doing to her? Who's another person I should put? I should probably put Miss Casey, right? Was there anyone else that was like really important? Except like characters that appear later. Oh, Miss Casey! falling to my knees. Free her! Okay. I'll put her like in between them, kind of, cause she is severed, but Miss Casey. It's so funny that she was like supposed to be the therapist. Alright. Oh, I should put his brother-in-law because he's really important. Actually. I forgot his name! They made her look distinctly different when she's in her severed state versus unsevered. Yes, they do such a good job of doing that in general. It's crazy. Oh, I feel sick remembering the episode again. just put them together. Oh, I feel like burping, but it's not coming out. Okay. Rickon and Devin. I think this is good enough for now. Maybe. I think so. Alright, we can start. We can start. Hello, Donalding. I am doing a Yap stream, so I'm recapping the entire season of the show. As I do. What music should I put in the background? Should I put the theme song? That'd be so creepy, you know? I'll just use this typical Yap song. Thank you for the redeems. Okay. I went into the show blind, but I'm considering showing you guys like the opening sequence before I start, because it's really well made. I was watching a video essay. The video's like on my YouTube right now. Okay. Yeah, the title sequence is amazing. I heard they won an Emmy for it, so W. I need to watch the show. Songa, get on it! I'm suffering! It's so awful. I mean, it's amazing, but it's so awful. Oh god, Hale. The new episode, like, opened up, not questions, but like it really displayed the true horror aspect of the Severance program. Because we know that the innies, like their whole life is just one purpose, basically, and they're stuck there, right? But then the severed, like, personalities of the recent episode, like their purpose is truly just one thing. And it's like, they're like a separate human with their like a separate soul, and it's so disgusting. It's so awful. You need to watch it. Typical Aki speak. I want to theorize with you, please. I went like full what service is it on? I watched it on a website. I can send the website to you, but it's Apple TV, which nobody has, which is a shame because I feel like the show it's already pretty big. I mean, it's doing well, but I feel like it should be doing even better. And I feel like the whole like streaming thing we have now is just like holding it back. Yeah, I'll send you a website. A very good website. Yup. Did you watch the podcast? Oh no, I didn't. I actually watched I watched like Adam Scott's podcast of Conan O'Brien, and before I watched the show, and he like talked a little bit about it, and I was like, this is interesting. And then I started it, and I was like, oh. I saw someone, one of my friends posted a screenshot of their roommate being like, I don't understand what this is about. And my friend was like, my roommate who's like media illiterate. Your Audi does this thing you'll never. Your Audi. I saw someone do like a music theory video on the opening sequence. They talk about behind the scenes. Ooh, okay, yeah, I need to watch it then. Especially since I'm like, it'd be such a good thing to put on while I'm drawing. Yeah, to educate. Yeah, it's like my roommate is media illiterate. This is what he sent me. God, what was that video? I watched like a music theory one. Damn it! All of my YouTube history is just the Oscars! Me at 2 a.m. watching Kieran Culkin's acceptance speech. Now I just search Severance in my history. Okay, I found it. I watched someone do like a music theory analysis on it, and the comments are so funny. The comments are like, please enjoy all the chords equally. Your Audi is highly skilled in music theory. Oh my god. I spelled Audi wrong. How'd I change it? Whatever, it's fine. And then like all the comments are just people speaking like the Severed people, and it's like the theme is mysterious and important. It's a good job figuring that out. A handshake is available upon request. Hi, Emil. Congratulations, Charles C. You have earned 1 hour music dance experience. Your Audi loved the sound of tritones. The comments are so funny. I'm gonna start speaking like that from now on. Okay, I need to actually get started. Let's watch the... Defiant Jazz was a masterpiece. The dance sequence was like, how do you craft a whole dance sequence where it's so fun, but the whole time you're just so unsettled? I was like so uncomfortable while watching it, but like it was so fun too. And it was like so funny. Yo, Irving broke it down. And then Dylan sitting at the table. I chose this photo of Mr. Milchick with the fruit platter. It's so funny. It's like awful, but it's so funny. Okay, opening sequence. Let's watch the opening sequence together first. It explains nothing, so you'll still be going into this blind. Oh. Uh-oh. Okay, there we go. It's... The music is stuck in my head. There's someone made a video, it's like 10-hour version. And people were like, I listened to this for my entire workday. Turn off the music. Enough! Okay, turn this up. Wait, is this the... Alright, I was like, watch this be season 2. Do they show it in episode 1? I think it was episode 2 they showed this opening sequence. Okay, it's working. Turning on desktop audio. I don't think they showed it in episode 1. But it's like after episode 1, and you go to the next episode, this plays in the beginning, and you're like, oh jeez. I love this. I love the music. After watching the music theory video, it's like even better for me now. Adam Scott! Oh, it's so good now that like I finished it. Like watching it back, it's like so genius. Oh. It's so good. I'm glad they won awards for it. Oh, this part's so creepy. Oh, that part is so creepy. Could be a James Bond intro. Wait, hold on. What is he holding? Is he holding the card? Oh, he is! I never took, like, super close look at it because I didn't want to make my brain rot worse. Apparently, Extra Leg had never done a title sequence before this too. Staff just found them on IG or something. No way! That's crazy. Now this is excellent. There's like every single second of it says something. And I'm not gonna pick it apart right now because I'm gonna go insane. But oh, the needle scene. Oh, it like when they were implanting the Severance thing, the chip. I guess it's a chip, even though it doesn't really. Yeah, when they were implanting the Severance chip into his head, I didn't think they would actually show like the opening the scalp. I was like, oh my god. But yeah, it's so good. I definitely need to take a closer look at it. Anyways, let's begin. Turn on the Gap music. So, episode 1. It starts off, I believe. Does it start off with him going through the hallways? Or did it start off with Helly waking up? Oh my god, I already forgot. See, I did this without any preparation. Anyway, it starts off... No, it starts off with Helly. So Helly... Okay. God, I'm getting flashbacks. So, Helly... Lurking to avoid spoilers, have fun. No problem! Let me know... wait, I was gonna be like, let me know when you watch it. But I was like, wait, I'm the one sending it to you. Hold on. I'm gonna do it right now in case I forget. But the episode starts off with Helly waking up on a table. So Helly R on the left side. Wait, let me get you the website. It's loading so slow because I have like a VPN on right now, and the VPN is like, this website is a little. Don't worry, it's a trusty website. I promise. Okay, season. All right, I'll send it to you right now because I'll definitely forget. But let me know when you watch it. Would love to discuss. We need more people on this. All right. So it begins with Helly R waking up on a table in a locked conference room. And you're like, what the heck is going on? Where is she? Is she being held hostage? Because she literally wakes up like on the table, like face down. And a voice talks to her through some kind of intercom device. And the voice is like, hello, would you like to take a survey? And she's like, what? Where am I? And the voice repeats like, oh, would you like to take a survey? It's only 5 minutes. It'll be really fast. And then she's like, hell no. She's like, where am I? So she's like, where am I? Oh, who am I? What's going on? And the voice is just like, please take survey. So she starts looking around. She gets up. She like looks at the walls. She tries opening the door and she's like panicking. So she's like really trying to shake the door open. And after she fails to open the door and realizes she has like nowhere else to go and she can't do anything, she's like, okay, you said it was it 5 questions? I forgot. But she was like, oh, you said it was like just 5 questions, right? And the voice is like, yeah. And she's like, okay, fine, I'll take the survey. So she goes back and the first question is like, what is your name? And she's like, I don't know. I can't remember. And the second question is, can you tell me which home state you are in? And she can't recall that either. So she's like, I don't know. And then I think the next question is like about Mr. Egan. What was it? What does Mr. Egan... Something about breakfast, right? I don't want to get it wrong. Oh yeah, the question is, what is Mr. Egan's favorite breakfast? So she's like, who's Mr. Egan? And she's like, what? So she can't answer that question either. And then they ask a few more questions. I forgot what the other questions were. They ask Kelly. Boop, 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 boop. Boop, 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 boop. I guess the other questions don't really matter. She does ask like I forgot that question. The Mr. Egan one? Wait, oh my god, someone just said the whole identity was revealed with the questions in the beginning. What? I'm gonna have to look back at that. Okay, so it says, which state or territory were you born? And then she doesn't remember. Please name any state or territory that comes to mind. And she says like, she's like, I don't know, Delaware? So she does remember like the states, you know. She just doesn't know where she is. And then the fourth question is, what is Mr. Egan's favorite breakfast? And she's like, I don't know this either. And then Mark says, or the voice on the intercom, it is Mark, and he says like, okay, you can't answer that. And he's like, oh, his favorite breakfast was 2 raw eggs. And then Helly says like sarcastically, she's like, oh, so I've heard. And then the fifth question is, what is or was the color of your mother's eyes? And she doesn't remember that either. So then they're like, okay, the survey's over. And he's like, great job, like you scored a perfect score, which is like really weird because you're like, perfect score? She couldn't answer 4 of the questions, right? But that's what they want. So it clicks where you're like, oh, okay, they're making sure she doesn't remember anything, right? And then to pick apart the questions in the survey, the first one that says, who are you? It tests different parts of their memory. So the first question is kind of like a autobiographical memory. And it's testing the memories of a person's individual history. And the whole point of someone being severed is that they're a completely new person, right? So they have to make sure that they don't remember anything about who they are, because now you're like a new person being born. And it's like basically a baby. But you already have like previous knowledge of like basic knowledge of like, okay, you know, like these countries exist, like this place exists, this is what I do, you know. It's not like completely like, oh, I don't know how to do anything, but it's just no memory of where you are, who you ever were. And then the second question is like testing, I believe the second and third question is testing semantic memory, which is like general knowledge, right? Knowledge of general facts. It's making sure you don't remember personal semantic info, but then making sure that you know general semantic info. So for example, she doesn't remember which state she was born in, but she does remember a state. So they're making sure you still have like general knowledge, just not personal ones. And then the fourth question, we can talk about later because it's a deeper question. But the fifth question is visual memory. So they're making sure that you don't remember visual stimuli like faces or buildings. They want it completely severed so that you don't recognize your coworkers if you have met in the outside world. So they're making sure you don't recognize anyone. So yeah, they ask these questions, and then he opens the door. The voice over the intercom. He opens the door. It's like, you got a perfect score. And then the scene kind of shifts to Mark, crying in a parking lot. So it like jumps time or location. So we see that it's Mark that opens the door and tells her that she got a perfect score. But that's Mark S, which is his innie, right? And then the scene jumps to Mark on the outside world. He's in his car, he's crying in the parking lot, and then he composes himself, pulls himself together, and then he goes to work at this huge building, which we find out is called Lumen Industries. He changes clothes into his work clothes, and then he enters an elevator. And as the elevator descends, it's almost like for a second, the person like disassociates. It's like their soul is sucked out of their body and then comes back in. And he suddenly gains like a new personality, kind of. Like the guy that entered was all gloomy and like depressed. And then the guy that comes out of the elevator looks confident and like cheerful. And he walks through the elevator and goes down like this elaborate series of corridors. It's like these long hallways, and it unsettles you because it's very much like those liminal spaces where it's just a white hallway, and then you turn and it's another white hallway. Everything looks the same. So he goes through these corridors until he arrives at a little room with the room is completely blank. The walls are white and the floor is green. It's like, are they imitating grass maybe? I don't know. But in the center is cubicles, like 4 of them. So he arrives in the room, and the room is called MDR, which stands for macro. Oh my god, I'm saying micro. Macro Data Refinement. So they all work at this place together. I'm gonna write it down. MDR. Macro Data Refinement. Okay. And then he walks into the room and he immediately starts chatting with the coworkers there. He's like, hey Dylan. Like, hey Dylan G. Good morning. Hi Irving. Hey Irv. So he's like greeting them. And Irv enters and he's like, he says a joke about macro refinery. He says a joke about breakfast. I forgot what it was. He says, what's for breakfast, kids, right? Is that what he says? Or is it what's for dinner? Oh, he says, hey kids, what's for dinner? Okay, so he says, hey kids, what's their dinner? And the whole point of that joke is that they don't get dinner. Because technically they leave work at 6. So it's their Audi that eats dinner, not them. So they don't get dinner. So his whole joke is like, hey kids, what's for dinner? Yeah, like the old guy. And then both Dylan and Mark is like, it's not funny. We told you to stop doing that. It's not funny. And then Mark is called by his superior, Mr. Milchick. And Mr. Milchick takes him to, oh my god. I put her Audi name. She has 2 names, but in the innie place, her name's Miss Cobell. So Milchick takes Mark to Miss Cobell, and they're like, congratulations, Mark. You got promoted to department chief. And he's like, why? And they're like, oh, we're sorry to inform you, but your coworker, Petey, quit the company. Like, he's gone. He left. And Mark is like, Petey quit? And it's like he just disappeared to them. Like, their coworker's just gone. And it's sad. And then he's like, but Petey's like my best friend. So it's like this whole thing where they have like separate relationships in the work area, right? So it's like, yeah, we know Petey and you were really close, but he abruptly left the company. So now you're the department chief. And then he's kind of expected. What if you're outside and just go drinking before work? What if work gives a work dinner or something like that? Do they just have to deal with that? There's no work dinner. They like monitor what you eat, and you only get a set amount of tokens per day. And the tokens are supposed to be like, if you want food, you have to put a token in. So it's like they limit your amount of food. And yeah, they do have to just deal with that, I believe. I don't know if alcohol will affect. I think it just like gives lasting like discomfort, because I remember Irving in one episode, he's like really tired, and they're like, oh, then your Audi must not have slept well or something. So it's like, oh, your Audi like didn't sleep enough kind of thing. And he's like, ugh. So it does affect them, I think, in terms of like sleep or what they do the night before. And then tokens. They get little tokens. Where was I? Oh yeah, so they're like, Mark, you're promoted, congratulations. And then he doesn't even have time to grieve, because you're not allowed to show like strong emotion. So he just kind of sits there and he's like, oh, okay. Squonks, yeah, you guys can only eat a certain amount of squonks per day. And then it's like this really weird. Also, the whole like episode so far gives you a really weird feeling, because the way they talk is just so unnatural. It's like very robotic, or it's like how I talk sometimes. like I'm like AI or something. So they're like, okay, congratulations on the promotion. And they're like waiting for him to say thank you. And he's like, thank you very much. And then before he leaves, I think Miss Cobell says like, a handshake is available upon request. And Mark is like, oh, can I get a handshake? And then they like shake hands. It's very weird. How are we supposed to do that when you only stream 3 times per week? Anyways. So, Mr. Milchick is like, alright, your new position duties start right away. We will oversee you interviewing a new applicant. So he's tasked to conduct the interview, and then Mark is like, oh, okay. So then Mark enters the like intercom room or whatever, and he has a whole binder with him, and he's flipping through the binder, and it says like questions to ask, and then there's stuff like what to do in case like the person refuses to answer. Like it's all these rules in the binder. So he flips through the binder, and he's like really clumsy with it because it's his first time. And then Mark is like, hello, would you like to take a survey? I think that's the first question he asks. And then Helly is like, it jumps all the way back to the beginning when she wakes up on the table, right? So it's like connecting now, except it's in Mark's perspective. And Helly is like, who the hell are you? Where am I? And then Mr. Milchick is like, Mark, you forgot to say the first question. Or you forgot to say something before you asked her the question. And he starts panicking. He's like, oh shoot. And he's like looking through the paper. He's like flipping through. And while he's like flipping through the binder, Helly is freaking out, right? She starts like shaking the door. And then you find out the door that she was trying to open in the beginning to like exit is the door to the intercom room. So then the intercom room's door starts shaking, and Mark is like, ah! He's flipping through the binder. And it turns out you were supposed to tell them their their name and introduce yourself or something. Like there's something else you were supposed to do first, but you forgot. So then eventually he's like, your name is Helly R. You are applying for a job at the severed floor of this company. And then he explains, like he tries to calm her down. So he's like, I was also in your position when I started. Like I woke up on that table, and the interviewer who conducted my interview, his name was Petey, and he ended up becoming my best friend. So he's kind of saying like, you know, I know you're panicked right now, but everything will go fine. Hey, I became best friends with the person that interviewed me, so it's like, calm down, you know, it's gonna be fine. But Helly's like obviously reasonably freaking out. And then he's like trying to he's trying to calm her down, and I think she throws something at him. Like bonks him in the head. She's like, get me out of here! And then he's like, oh god! And then like she refuses to like listen, basically. She's like, I need to get out of here, like I've been kidnapped, I'm trapped somewhere. And Mark is like, okay, you can ask 2 more times. So he's like, ask me to leave 2 more times. And she's like, what? And he's like, do it, ask me you want to leave like 2 more times. So she asks like more, 2 more times, and then he flips through his binder, and you see like there's even a section where it's like, if they ask to leave 3 times, this is what you tell them, right? So he's like, okay, you may leave. And then he's like, here, like go through here. So she exits and goes into the same hallway that Mark like entered from. She goes down these hallways that look exactly the same, and then she finally finds the exit door. And she opens the door and leaves. And Mark is standing like around the corner, and he like waits for her. Like it seems like he's waiting for something. So Helly leaves through the exit door. But then she comes back again. And she looks really disorientated. And then she exits again. And then she comes back again. Me? Gungaga. Hi, Tex! And then she keeps leaving and then coming back. And then like running down the hallway, finding the exit and leaving again. But then coming back. So you're like, what's going on? And Mark just stands there and like waits. And he's just waiting as she like keeps leaving and then coming back and leaving and coming back. Hello, Tex! I'm just yapping, don't mind me. And then eventually Mark is like, oh hey, and then Helly's like, what's going on? Like, I wanna leave. And he's like, you did leave. And she's like, but I can't get out. And he's like, no, you did get out. So she's like really confused. And she's like doesn't understand what's going on. And we don't understand either. Cause it's like, oh, then maybe this door is like a loop, you know? Like you open the door and then you like end up in the same hallway again. Like maybe it's one of those situations. So that's what we're thinking too, right? And then Mark gives her a tour of the building. And he basically tells her like, oh, you're here because you're Petey's replacement. Like my best friend Petey, he quit. Like he left suddenly. So you're here to replace him. So then Mark takes Helly to Miss Cobell, the big boss. And Miss Cobell shows Helly a video disc. And she says this is the last part of your orientation. So Helly sits down and she watches the video. And as soon as the video starts, she sees herself. So it's Helly watching herself on like the screen. And the Helly on the screen is saying like, it's like this script. I forgot what they say, but it's like, oh, what's the Severance script? It's basically saying like, I went through the Severance procedure willingly. Like, I chose to do this. I understand that my severed self will like work on this floor. Blah, 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 blah. It's like the whole script. What's it? Video. Script. Was I make all these? Yes, like I make all these statements freely. Was that it? It's a really creepy script. I'm trying to find it so I can read it. Oh yeah, so it's just like, okay, I understand I'm going through the procedure, I'm choosing to willingly do this, blah 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 blah. So it's basically her watching herself agree to like be sent here and be severed, and then she says like, I make these statements freely, and it's like the thing that they constantly repeat. So she sees this video and she's like, oh, so basically I'm just a new version of the woman on the screen, and this version of her only exists inside this workplace, inside this building. So all memories I have will remain here. And the Severance program works so that, I said this in a previous stream, but I'll just say it again because we're doing a Yap stream. It's very like, the way the Lumen introduces it is like, imagine if you could go to your workplace and then, but it's another person working for you. And what happens is you go in, you clock in at 9 a.m. and then by the time you open your eyes, it's 6 p.m. and you're ready to go home and like spend the rest of the day with your family and eat dinner and have fun. And then it's like the person that does all the work for you is a separate version of yourself who will do like all the work so you don't have to suffer, blah blah blah. And they're very like, don't worry though, your severed self is super happy to be working here. It's like they're so happy. The quality of life here is incredible. And but it's really messed up because I kind of like related to this to like as if you had a clone of yourself, but that's basically what it is. Like, you know how people ask all those like moral, ethical questions about like if there's a clone of yourself? It's basically the same thing with like these severed people, right? Because they're like individual people with their own feelings and memories and thoughts and like souls, basically. But they only exist in this room or in this building. So they work, they finish work, they go to the elevator, and then they basically just exit the elevator again and then start work again. And that's their whole life. Like, they just do this on loop. And everyone besides Helly seems to be like really submissive. It's kind of like they've been like chiseled away until this is their only purpose. It's really sad to watch. So yeah, that's the whole Severance program. And that brings up like a lot of questions, right? You're like, what if my innie did something at work that I wasn't aware of? Because you guys still share the same body. So it's like, what if you get injured at work? Then you're injured when you're an outie too, right? You'll just be injured. Like, if something happens in a workplace, it happens to your body. And it's something that they don't really reassure people about. Like, they're like, oh, the quality of life here is wonderful, but there's no solution for like, what if something happens in a workplace that affects your personal life? And then at some point on the TV, you see people arguing. Like, there's a whole movement where it's like, severance is awful, we need to get rid of it. And then there's people that support it and people that don't. And then there's a whole news on the TV in one of the episodes where it says like a woman, when she realized she was pregnant, like as her outie self, she was pregnant, and she's like, why am I pregnant? And then it turns out that her innie had a relationship with someone in her workplace. So her innie is like, oh, I'm in a happy relationship with this person at work, blah, 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 blah. But then her outie has no memory of it, and she doesn't know like that person at all. But then suddenly she's pregnant. So it's all these like really messed up like situations to think about. Yeah, it's horrifying. Imagine, and suddenly she's pregnant. And even worse is that her outie self already has a husband and a family. So she's like pregnant with someone else's, like some random person's child, and someone that she only knows as her innie self. And it's like this whole horrifying thing. So it raises all these questions about like, what the hell? At what point are you two like separate people, right? And at what point where there's a line drawn where it's like it's still you? It's a lot to think about, but very, very nightmare scenario. So that's Severance, basically. So they show Helly the video of her like outie self saying that she has willingly undergone this procedure, right? And Helly has a lot of trouble coping with this because she's basically just a person that was like born into it. Do they not have protection at work? They probably don't, because relationships between workers there are prohibited, I believe. Like, you can get pay deducted for or like there's punishment if you're involved with someone like romantically or physically. So I'm guessing they did it like secretly, which causes a whole other problem. But yeah, Helly has trouble coping with this because it's like, I mean, what if you just suddenly existed, you know? Like, suddenly born into this place, and you're immediately told like, okay, you work here now. It's like, hello? I don't even know who I am. So she has a lot of trouble coping with this like reality. So she's like really bad attitude. She doesn't want to do her work, which is like understandable. But Mark is like really concerned about her because like he was like that once, right? So he tries to like comfort her and be like, it's not that bad. Like, we're all friends here, you know, in the office. So it's pretty good. And he's like, it's fine. There's like nothing bad happens here. So then, after the shift is over, Mark leaves the Lumen building. He goes through the elevator and returns to his like outside self. So then he gets off work and he's visited by his sister Devin, who is over here. Visited by Devin, and Devin takes him to like a dinner party with her husband Rickon. So they go to a dinner party together. And at the dinner party, they reveal that the conversation with like the other people reveal that Mark is grieving over the death of his wife, Gemma. And that is probably why he went under Severance, or went through with Severance, because of his grief. And he was trying so hard to get through the day. So I guess the idea of like having someone that can do the work for him without being weighed down by this like debilitating grief is what made him go through with the procedure. Because he used to be a teacher, he like lost his job. I lost like everything basically. He couldn't do anything after his wife died. So it's like a big motivator for why he went through Severance. And it also reveals that he's been working at Lumen for 2 years. So then the other dinner guests are like, oh, you're severed? And then they start like debating over the use of severance, blah, blah, blah. And then after the dinner party, Devin invites Mark over to her place, and Mark stays over at her house for the night. But before he goes to sleep, he looks out the window and he notices a man standing outside, like by a tree, just staring at him. And he's like, what the hell? But then the man's gone again, so he's like, okay. And then he goes to he like goes to sleep or something. And then later, the next scene, Mark is at a diner and he's on the phone with his neighbor. And he's like, all right, I'm sorry, listen, you put the trash out too early again, all right? I'm telling you to put the trash out at this time because then your trash, blah, 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 blah. Like, it's a whole, like, neighbor situation. A typical neighbor moment. And then, before he can continue the conversation, someone slides into his, like, diner booth, and it's this guy, Petey. And you recognize him because you've seen him in like Mark's memories at work. But he's in the outside world, so you're like, what? So then Petey slides into the booth and Petey says like, hey, what's for dinner, kids? Like the thing that Irving always says as a joke. But Mark doesn't recognize the joke because it's his outside self, right? So Mark is like, what? And Petey's like, oh, sorry, you don't understand that reference. And then Petey's like, it's me, Petey, from work. And Mark is like, okay. And Petey's like, listen, we used to be best friends in the workplace. And Mark is like, you mean my innie is your best friend? Because they see them as like two separate people. And Petey's like, yeah. And he's like, listen, I'm being followed right now. And I've been reintegrated. I reversed my severance procedure. And I remember everything. So reintegration, I guess, is merging with your severed self, because he retains memories from work. And Petey's like, please, like, I want to help you. I want to help you too, because we were best friends. And he's like, here. He gives him an envelope with an address on it. He's like, go here if you want to know more about what is actually happening at Lumen, our workplace. And then he leaves, and then Mark returns home. And Mark is on the porch, and then his neighbor calls out to him. And his neighbor is Miss Covell! And she goes by Miss Selvig! And you're like, oh! You're like, oh! And so he's having a full-on conversation with Miss Selvig. And you're like, oh my god. Like, you can't tell if she knows him. You're like, is it her? Like, is she also severed? But then it like kind of implies that she knows Mark in general, like any Mark also. So you're like, and then the episode ends there, and you're like, oh shit! You're like, oh shit! This show is kind of crazy, and you have so many questions, right? So then, episode 2 starts, and then it starts off with a flashback of Helly recording her statement where she agrees to subject herself to the severance procedure. And then after that, Mr. Milchick stops the video, and he's like, perfect, that's all we need. And then he's like, here, come with me. And then he takes Helly to a surgery room where they like straight up slice open her scalp, like drill through the skull, and then they implant a little like microchip into her brain. And then she reawakens in a stairwell outside the severed hallway. Yeah, I was like, oh my god. I didn't think they would actually show it, but they did. I was like, oh. And the microchip is like in this huge ass needle. I was like, oh god. So she wakes up again in the hallway. And she looks around a little bit. And then she walks back through the door. So then you realize it's like, oh, because she agreed to be severed, right? And remember the whole sequence in the last episode where Helly R kept like going through the exit but then coming back in? So it's like, oh, it wasn't a situation where it's like she opens the door and she's back in the hallway. It's like a loop thing. What was actually happening was the second she stepped out of the floor into the stairwell, it was her outside self. And her outside self was like, what am I doing here? I need to go back to work. Because I agreed to this. So then she goes back in the door. And Helly R wakes up inside the floor. So it makes it seem like, you know, it like keeps going through these doors, but she ends up in the same place. But that's not what's happening. What's happening is she exits, and then her outside self walks back in. Like, puts her back in. And it confuses her because for her like consciousness, it's kind of like, oh my god, I keep waking up in the same hallway. You know? It's like really mind like fucky. And then Mr. Milchick explains like, oh, this is an ordinary part of the orientation process. You just have to re-enter the office, blah blah blah. And then suddenly Helly R experiences a time jump. And then she discovers that she already completed her first day. And like this whole thing is so like, god, imagine. She like kind of like reawakens again, and they're like, oh yeah, your first day is over. And she's like, what? But I was literally just there. It's really messed up. And then Helly goes back to Lumen, and then Mark S is there, and Mark S explains their job. And he's like, oh, our job is basically to sort through these like encrypted numbers into digital bins. And that's macro data refinement. And it's very confusing because you're like, what the hell are they actually doing? But the thing is, they don't know what they're doing either. Hold on. I need to show you the screen. Because it genuinely just looks like they're playing like a game or something. Open image and new tab. So this is what they see on the screen. Like it just looks like a game with like numbers. Yeah, that's what you do at work. So they just scroll through all of these numbers and then put some of them into files and stuff like that. And it's like really, you're like, what the hell are they even doing? And Mark tries to explain to her where he's like, listen, we refine these numbers and we sort them into these little digital folders. And Helly's like, what are we refining? And he's like, oh, we don't really know. And so she's like, what? How do you know which numbers to sort through then? And Mark is like, well, it's based on the feeling. And she's like, what do you mean? And he says like, there's clusters of data that you refine based on the emotional response they trigger in you. And she's like, what the hell does that mean? And Mark is like, well, you just find the numbers that make you feel scared and you put them into a folder. And she's like, scared of numbers? And he's like, you'll get it when you like experience it. He's like, if you find a number that like you're scared of, what you do is like you section it off and then you file it away. And she's like, what the hell? She's like, what are y'all even doing here? And he's like, well, we don't know, but it's just like a feeling you get. You'll get the hang of it. So she's very like scoffing and she's like, oh, this is stupid. 34. Ah! And then she doesn't take it seriously at all. She's just like looking through all the numbers. She's like super bored. And it turns out none of the people there know what they're actually doing. They just know they have to do it. So you're like, this is so weird. And then Milchick enters with a big smile and a tray of treats. And he's like, welcome to Helly R's welcoming party. And he's like, let's have a welcoming party. And he's like, this way, Helly R will feel more comfortable at her new job. And then he's hoping that like Mark, Irving, and Dylan will like help her settle in. And then during this, Mark is like, hey, is Petey okay? Do you know if he's alright? He just disappeared. And Milchick is like, oh, it's fine. He's just not working here anymore. And Mark is like really conflicted because he's really sad, but you're not allowed to show that. So it's kind of like he's sad, but he's not supposed to be sad. But he sees like their group photos because they all have group photos on their desk. Like all their desks are the same. They all have the same accessories. And there's a group photo of his desk with him, Irving, Dylan, and Petey. So he's like looking at this photo of Petey and he just like feels like something's wrong. But then at the welcoming party, they take a new group photo with Helly R instead. So then after the group photo, Helly takes a post-it note and she starts writing stuff on it. And they're like, what are you doing? And she's like, oh, I'm writing a note to my outie self, telling her that I want to quit and I don't want to work here anymore. And everyone's like, no, Helly R, don't be like this. Like, come on, it's fine. We just had your welcoming party. And then Mark tells her, like, it's not gonna work. You can't write a note to your outside self. There's, like, code detectors in the elevator. And they will detect any message you're trying to send to the outside world, and they won't let you leave. And Helly doesn't believe him, because Helly R is like, that sounds ridiculous. So then she, like, runs away with this note in her hand. And she gets into the elevator. And the second that she walks into the elevator, it starts blaring like red and there's alarms like and she's like, oh. And then the elevator like doesn't close. And then you see the most like intimidating man ever like walking down the hallway towards the elevator and you're like, oh, she's screwed. And it's this like big man walking towards the elevator and it turns out he's the head of security. And he pries the elevator doors open and like drags her out. And you're like, oh my god, what's gonna happen to her, right? But then Mark S comes running. And Mark S is like, sorry, it was my fault. She's under me. She's a new person here. And I was introducing her to the new workplace. And I forgot to tell her that there's no code detectors in the elevator. I'm sorry, it's my fault. So then the security is like, very well, come with me. So the security takes Mark S away instead of Helly R. They go down a hallway, and the security guard puts him into a room called the break room. And you're like, what the hell happens in the break room? They don't show it though. He's just like forced to go into the break room, and then you don't see what happens in there. Not the break room! No, a break. And then that night, it's like time skips to after work. So it's outside Mark now, outie Mark. And he's on a date with his sister Devin's midwife, Alexa. And they're on a like date together, they're eating dinner. And he discusses his work at Lumen, and then she's like, how does it feel like being severed and stuff like that? And he's like, I don't know. I don't remember anything from when I'm at work, so I wouldn't know. And then on their way back, as they're walking on the street, they run into like an anti-severance protest. And it's basically like them trying to advocate for the lives of severed people and how they're like trapped in there and how like unethical it is. And Mark, who's drunk, gets into an argument with them, and he's like such an asshole about it. But you can tell he's acting out like all his grief and I think also fear about severance, because the topic obviously makes him uncomfortable. So he just starts acting out and like lashing at them. And he's like, oh yeah, how do you know they're suffering? Huh? Like, do you know them? Are you one of them? Well, I'm severed, blah, blah. And he just like starts going off. And then his date is like, bro, what the hell? That's so embarrassing. Imagine your date getting into an argument with, with teenagers on the street. I'd be like, alright, I'm gone. I don't know you. But his date is like, Mark, what the hell? Like, why are you being such an asshole? Just leave them alone. And she's like trying to get him away from like the protesters. And then he's like, whatever. And then he leaves. And then the next day, Mark is in his car again. And he's about to go to work. But then he's staring at the envelope that Petey gave him with the address on it, right? And he's like, you know what? I'm not going to work. I'm going to go to this place. So he calls in. And he's like, hello? And I think Mr. Milchick picks up. But I don't recall if it is. But he calls into work and he's like, hi, it's Mark. Mark Scout. I am calling out of work today. And the person on the phone is like, oh no, how come? Are you okay? And he's like, yeah, no, I just, I don't feel too good. I feel a bit under the weather, so I'm not gonna come into work today. Sorry about that. And then, the person on the phone is like, aw, so sorry to hear that. Well, Mark S.'s coworkers will miss him today. Hope you feel better soon. It's really like, I don't know, it's just unsettling. It's like, aw, well, your innie's coworkers will miss your innie. Please come back soon so he can see his friends again. It's like very that, you know. So then he hangs up the phone. And then he drives to the address that Petey gave him. He arrives at an abandoned greenhouse. And he finds Petey waiting for him. And Petey shows him a map of the entire severed floor that they work on. And Mark is like, what the hell is this? And Petey's like, it's a map I made of the severed floor. It took me a long time to map out the entire floor. And I hid a copy of the map for your innie self to find inside. And I'm not sure how many departments are operating at Lumen even now. And then Petey starts explaining, because Mark is like, why are you so, like, what the hell even happens in there, right? And Petey's like, they basically punish you over and over again for anything wrong you do until you submit. And he starts talking about the break room. So you find out that in the break room, what happens is basically like, it feels very like something out of like wartime. It's like what people do to like their war like prisoners or captors. It's very like mental torture. So what they do is they put the person waterboarding. Imagine. What they do is they put the person. They sit them down, and the whole room is dark. And then Mr. Milchick sits like across from them. I'm trying to explain it in a way that makes sense without seeing it. Maybe I'll just search up an image. But Mr. Milchick sits across from them. And there's like a screen separating them, but you can still see him. And the only light in the room is shining like right at their face. So it's very like interrogation in like some kind of dark room. The light is shining at their face. And the screen lights up in front of them. And it's in like an entire apology script. And it's, oh god, so that's basically like what you see, but they don't really, did they show it with Mark? They show with Helly, but I think they show with Mark. I'll search up the image, but it's basically the screen lights up with an apology script, and what you're supposed to do is you're supposed to read the apology, like to Mr. Milchek, and he records it. Which it like doesn't seem that bad, right? Because you're like, oh, they're just reading an apology. Yeah, he seems so trustworthy. It's like, and the acting is so good because he is like all smiles. And then he enters the break room and he's just like a totally different person. So, okay, this is what it looks like. I'll just open the image. Images. Oh my god, it's so freaky. And it doesn't seem that bad, right? You're like just reading an apology. Okay, this is what it's set up like. You're in a dark room, there's a screen, and on it is a script of the apology you're supposed to be doing, and Mr. Milchek would be sitting on the other side. And the script is, forgive me for the harm I have caused this world. None may atone for my actions but me, and only in me shall their stain live on. I am thankful to have been caught, my fall cut short by those with wizened hands. All I can be is sorry, and that is all that I am. It's like so creepy, because it's like all they do is like one small mistake, and then you have to be like, forgive me for the harm I have caused this world. No one can atone for my actions but me. This is what you see across the screen is Mr. Milchek. And he's like recording your apology. And then this is what it looks like when you're reading the screen. It's like actual like mental torture. And then at first it's like not that bad because Mark reads it like one time, right? But then Mr. Milchek ends the recording and he goes, that wasn't enough. Or he's like, you didn't mean it. He'll say like, it wasn't genuine, you didn't mean it, do it again. So then you read the apology again. And then he ends the recording and he goes, you didn't mean it, say it again. So you're like, oh, they're making them read it over and over and over and over and over again in this like dark room with the light shining at them. And you're wondering like how many times do they read it, right? And then they show later where it's like later on, but then when Mark returns from the break room, they're like, oh, how many times did they make you do it? And he says like 150 something or something. You're like, oh my god. And it's like that whole psychological thing where it's like if you read something or like repeat something enough, like to yourself over and over again, you'll start to believe it, right? So it's the whole thing where it's like, I am a stain upon this world. I have ruined this world. I cannot atone. And you just read this over and over again. And it can go on for like the entire day. They just like don't let you leave until they like quote unquote believe that you meant the apology. Yeah, Lord, I have sinned. So it's just this over and over again. It's like very like psychological, mental torture, experiment, interrogation, the thing. It's like when they say like police will ask someone if they're guilty over and over again until they say they're guilty, right? And kind of like give in. It's like that, but like 200 times worse. It's like repeating the same thing over and over and over again. Yeah. So then that's what happens in break room. So Petey's telling Mark about this, and Mark is like, what the hell? Is this actually what's happening inside? And then back in the office, Helly R and Dylan G are like discussing the purpose of their job, and Dylan's like, listen man, I don't know what we do here. And Helly's like, are you guys just okay with not knowing what you're doing? And he's like, I mean, there's nothing else we can do. So they're discussing, and as Helly R and Dylan G are chatting, Irving starts dozing off. And we assume it's because like his outie self didn't sleep enough or something. Hi Vinny! I'm alright, I'm yapping. So Irving starts dozing off. And then he starts hallucinating. Like black liquid coming out of his cubicle and then his computer. And it's like slowly rushing towards him. And he starts panicking. Hi Warlock! And he like wakes up in a startle. And Heliar and Dylan G are like, whoa, Irv, are you okay? What's wrong? Did you fall asleep? And Irving's like panicking because he saw this like dark liquid coming at him. And he's like, oh yeah, I'm fine. I guess I'm just tired or something. So at this point you're like, oh my god, they're malfunctioning. Like, what's happening to him? And instead of, so he kind of gets punished. They come in and they're like, Irving, how could you sleep on the job? And Irving's like, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to doze off. It wasn't my mistake. I'm sorry. And you think that they're gonna send him to the break room because they're like all... Dylan's like scared that they're gonna send Irving to the break room, and Irving's like also scared. But then Miss Cobell is like, you know what? I'm gonna send you for a wellness check. And Milchick is like, go to wellness check. And you're like, what the hell is a wellness check, right? So then Irving goes down the hallway and he like enters this room. And it's, hi Hime! So he goes down the hallway and he enters this room for wellness check. And in the waiting area, he meets someone else that's working there, but like in a different department. I'm gonna put a picture of him up. So in the waiting room of wellness check, he meets a guy named Bert. And let me get a photo of him. Boop, 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 boop. Yes, I can move again. Okay, that's Bert. So he meets Bert in the waiting area. I'll put his name. While he's waiting for wellness check. What was his last name? Bert G, I think. Yeah, Bert G. Also an innie, he works in a different department. So in the waiting area for wellness check, he meets Bert. And Irving is like looking at a painting in the waiting room, and then Bert is like, oh, hi, like you're looking at the painting? And Irving's like, yeah. And they start like having small talk about the painting, which is very unnatural because people on the Severance floor are discouraged from talking to each other. Much less people from different departments. And Bert just happened to be coming out of like wellness check himself, and he runs into Irving and they start talking about the artwork on the wall. And you can tell that they like really click. Like they're having a really good time chatting about the painting. And they make like a little joke with each other. And they bond over their like admiration for art. And they start like referencing artwork and artists and stuff like that. So then you get to know Irving a little bit, because it's like, oh, he doesn't have any memory of who he is outside, right? But somehow he has this like innate love for art and music. So then you're like, maybe him on the outside is like also an artist or musician. Like he just innately has this appreciation or love for art. And it like provides a new like insight into the indie people, because you're like, they still hold parts of them from the outside. But Bert and Irving have a talk, and then afterwards, Miss Casey comes out of the room, and she's like, Irving, B, your wellness check can start now. So Irving says bye to Bert, and he goes into wellness check. And you're scared because you're like, what the hell are they going to do to him in wellness check? Because of what happened in the break room, right? Like, is it another kind of like war crime, like mental, psychological torture? So Irving goes into the wellness check room, and it's basically set up like a therapist's office. Backrooms series. I guess the floor kind of is like that, but it's like so much. There's so much to it. So it's set up like a therapist's office, and the counselor, Miss Casey, takes out a piece of paper, and she starts like reciting facts about Irv's Audi. So the wellness check session is basically like, here, let me read you facts about like the person you actually are on the outside. And it's like kind of messed up because you're like, it's the situation where it's like ignorance is bliss, right? It's like if you don't know about the person you actually are, then you won't have the urge to be like, I wish I knew who I was, or like I wish there was a life outside, you know? Lobotomy for wellness check. Yeah, it's so sad. I'm trying to find the script of what they read to Irving. Wellness check. And at first you think it's like, oh, this is pretty good, but then it like starts getting weird again. So Miss Casey is like, Irving B, would you like to hear some facts about your Audi? And Irving's like, yes, please. Like, very standard procedure. You have to be like, yes, please. So then she starts reading off the list. I'm gonna find wellness fact session. I'm trying to find a list because it's kind of important what they say. Water. I think the first thing was about water. Yeah, so Miss Casey goes like, okay, like first fact. Your Audi respects water, which is like really weird. He's like, your Audi likes water. So Irving's listening, and then it's like, she's like, your Audi likes to paint. Your Audi likes to do this. Like, it's very, like, step by step. Like, this is what your Audi likes to do. That's why you see all those memes online where people are like, your Audi, blah, blah, blah. But then she gets to one of the facts, and she says, your Audi is talented at kissing and lovemaking. And then Irving starts laughing. Because he's like, whoa, that was such a random, like, fact out of nowhere, right? He's like, my Audi is talented at kissing. So he, like, laughs a little bit. He's like, huh. And he, like, smiles. And then Miss Casey stops reading. And she goes, you cannot show... And she says, you cannot show a preference for one fact over the other. Please listen to all facts equally. So she, like... Basically, he cannot react at all to any other facts. He has to, like, make the same expression for each fact. So then Irving's like, I'm sorry, I wasn't. I just thought it was... And then she's like, I did not tell you could respond. And she's like, please don't respond again or else I will cut the session short. So then Irving, like, immediately stops because he obviously wants to hear more facts about himself, right? Because he doesn't know who he is. So he's like, okay. And then he stops talking. And then she starts reading off the list again. And then she says another fact where it's like, I think she says, like, your Audi likes the sound of radar. Your Audi is a graceful swimmer. And then it's like, your Audi loves to paint, loves long walks. Your Audi loves to read. And she's reading all these facts. And another fact, she says something and then he speaks up and he's like, wait. And he's like, what? Is that... And then she cuts him off again. And she's like, Irving B, if you respond without being told to one more time, like, that wellness session will just end here. And you won't hear any more facts about your Audi. So then he, like, shuts up. And then the wellness check continues. And then at first you're like... Cause the thing that happens in the break room is a form of punishment, right? And you're, like, unsure if wellness check is also a punishment. It kind of sounds like, letting them... Your Audi needs new car insurance. It sounds like they're, like, happy, like, listening to all these facts about themselves, right? Because they'll never know, like, who they really are or what they love on the outside world. So it's like a glimpse into who they are. It gives them some kind of, like, joy in this, like, really cruel and, like, doomed life, basically. But then you realize it's also a punishment of some kind. Because you're feeding them information about, like, a life that they're supposed to be living. Or, like, that is them. but it's not. So you're like giving them little like crumbs of like joy and happiness, but then if they express appreciation or joy about learning those like facts, they get punished for it. And you're like, if you react one more time, then I'm gonna stop reading facts about you to you. It's also a form of punishment. So you're like, Jesus Christ, these people, get them out of here. So that's how the wellness check goes, and then the wellness check ends. And he's forced to react neutrally, and then he's allowed to return to work. So it's kind of like you're like, oh, so they're not allowed to show like strong emotions. That's why everybody is like really neutral about everything. For example, like Mark S, when he found out that PD was just gone, how he was like really sad, but he didn't express it. Like he just had a neutral expression, and you can infer that's because if he expresses sadness over losing someone, they'll punish him. So that's why he doesn't react. What kind of show are you watching? It's awful. It's so cruel. And then if you take it a step further and think about it, what happens when one of the severed people quit the job? What happens when their Audi quits, right? What happens then? Their existence ends because they only exist in that building. So if their Audi quit the job, it's basically like they just blip out of existence, and it's like they never existed. It's kind of like dying in a way for these people. But they don't have control over that, right? So for example, like they said PD quit and that he's gone. So to Mark S, it's like, oh, he's never gonna see PD again. PD basically died. Even though that's his best friend at work, he never got to say bye. Like, PD's just gone. So to Mark S, it's like, my best friend at work is gone forever. It's like he never existed. And that's why he was so sad and grieving in the beginning when they told him, like, oh yeah, PD quit. But then he's not allowed to react to that. So it's like a really weird place. But yeah, so after Irving's wellness check, he returns to work. He's allowed to return to work. And they're like, oh, how was wellness check? And Irving's like, oh, it was fine. Oh, Innie and Audi. Yeah, so Innie is basically the person inside of the workplace, and Audi is like their actual life, like outside. And they're two separate people. So the Innie person won't know who they are and won't know the outside. Like their whole purpose is only to like stay in this one place forever. It's so messed up. Yeah, the belly button. Hi, Ninjash. So then, Irving, Dylan, and Helly are working, right? Because Mark is still stuck being mentally tortured in the break room by like war crime interrogation tactics. Mark is being tortured. So it's just Helly, Dylan, and Irving working. And then Helly is like looking through the numbers, right? Like just lazily. She's like super bored because they have no idea what they're doing. And thank you for the redeems. And the only thing that Mark S said to her was like, oh, you'll know which numbers to file away because the numbers will be scary. That's what he said. And she's like, what the hell does that mean, right? So she thinks this is like all like BS. And she's like, oh, this is stupid. So she's looking through the numbers. And then suddenly she like freezes. And she looks at one of the numbers on the screen. And it's like this really weird sequence where it seems like time and space narrows for her. And she starts like panicking. Like she starts breathing really erratically. She starts like hyperventilating. And then she's like, and she realizes like that's what Mark meant, right? So she starts freaking out and she's like, oh my god, I see it. And then Dylan and Irving's like, well, what's wrong? And she's like, the number, it's making me freak out. And she's like, I don't understand what's happening. So then they like try to help her and they're like, don't worry, don't panic. Like just circle around that number. And then she does it. And they're like, yeah, good job. And they're like, now file it away. So she files it away. And they're like, see, you did it. You did your first refining. And she's like slowly calming down. And she's just like, what the hell is going on? Like she's confused. The viewer is confused. we're just like, what in the world are they making them do? You know, like they don't even know what their job is. They're refining something they have no idea about, and it's just, oh, you're just confused. Everyone's confused. Each episode gives you like 10 more questions. Anyways, so then in the outside world, I know, right? I'm confused. In the outside world, we skip to Mark, his Audi. He's in the outside world, and he's with Petey at the greenhouse, right? Where Petey told him about what happens in the break room. So after that, Mark takes Petey to his home and lets him stay in his basement because Petey has been like hiding out in his greenhouse just having hallucinations. Yeah, this is cinema. And then Mark is like, you have nowhere to go, like here, come with me. And he's like, I promise you're safe in the basement, like no one can find you or anything. So then Mark takes Petey to his basement. Petey stays there. And you start panicking because you're like, because Mark doesn't know his neighbor is Miss Cobell, right? But the viewer knows. So you're like, oh my god, Mark, do not take Petey to your house. Your neighbor is Miss Cobell. Like he doesn't know because he doesn't have any memories of his workplace, right? So he brings Petey to the basement and he's like, you can stay here. So then Petey takes a shower, and in the shower he starts having severe hallucinations where his innie self and his outie self are like crossing over. So he starts hallucinating, he sees the cubicle, he sees his workplace, and he sees like Mark S, his like best friend in the workplace, but then it's like overlapping with the Mark in the real world, and he starts hallucinating, he's coughing up blood, and you're like, oh my god, he's dying. So it's this whole idea of like, wait, does reintegration slowly kill a person? Because these two realities, like these two people cannot coexist together inside of you. So it's like slowly killing you maybe? Because he's like throwing up blood and stuff, and then he collapses inside of the shower. And then the episode ends. In an alternate universe where people are being tortured. It's like hell. Okay, next episode. So then the episode starts off with Mark checking on Petey in the shower because he's like, what the hell happened? So Petey tells him like, oh, the memories I've been having are like, hope the stream's going good. Thank you, Nuki. Hi. So Petey tells him, like, all of my memories are being affected. I'm struggling to differentiate between the present and the past. Like, I don't know what's going on. I'm seeing things. How many episodes are there? I believe season 1 has 9 episodes. Yeah, 9. So then, but then he explains that there are benefactors who oppose the severance procedure, and they're the ones that helped him bypass the implant in his head and merge his memories together to like reintegrate him. And the process is known as reintegration. So he's explaining this whole thing to Mark. And he's like, Mark, I want you to do it too. Like, I want you to reintegrate because you're my best friend. And I want you to be okay. I want to free you from Lumen. But Mark has no memory of his workplace, right? So Mark is like detached from him. Because Petey remembers they're best friends. But then Mark is like, you're basically a stranger to me. Like, you're just telling me you're your best, like, I'm your best friend. And Mark refuses to participate because he's like, I don't care though, like I don't mind being severed. And he's like, the severance procedure has helped me cope with my wife's like death, you know, like I don't need reintegration. And he's saying that, and it makes you feel so like awful because you know what Mark S is going through. Like you know what his innie is going through in that building. And to have Mark be like, oh, I don't need reintegration because severance isn't affecting me. It's like, yeah, but it's affecting this other person who's like being tortured. But he doesn't realize that, right? He can't because he has no feeling or memory of that other person. Matrix. The opening sequence is so good. So yeah, it's this whole thing. And then, Helly R submits a resignation request to her outie self. So she says like, I want to quit, I want to resign. And if your innie at any point wants to quit, they can submit a resignation. But that resignation has to go through their outside person who agreed to the procedure in the first place. And the likelihood of that being accepted is basically 0%. Because as the outside person, you have no memory or idea of the person you are in that building, right? Like, you agreed to this job. So then to suddenly receive like a resignation request from the inside person being like, I want to quit. Obviously the outside person is going to be like, no. Like, I agreed to this job. You know, like, why would I quit? Like, I'm not the one doing the work. Why would I quit, right? But the inside person is like suffering like war crime torture, and they're like, please, I want to get out of here, please, like just let me quit. But then the outside person is like, there's literally no reason to quit, so no, I'm not letting you out. Cause they don't get that, right? That's why he keeps coming back for Wolverine. No. And then so Heliar submits a resignation request. It comes back, and she's like, I'm sure my outie will agree, because my outie is probably a good person. And then it comes back, and it's like, oh, your request has been denied. And she's like, what? And she's like, oh, it must be because the outside me, like, doesn't understand what I'm going through. She doesn't know, so that's why she's denying my request to leave. So she locks herself in the restroom out of desperation and starts writing a message on her body, because she's like, okay, I can't take like notes outside to communicate with the outside self. And also this whole thing where like they're not allowed to communicate with each other too is like basically guaranteeing that you just can't quit, right? So she starts writing a message on her body because she's like, oh, maybe it'll work if it's on my body. And then Mark like knocks on the door, and he's like, can I come in? And then he comes in and he tells her like, listen, it's not gonna work. Like, he sees her writing the message and he's like, it's not gonna work. And you start piecing together that Mark has probably done all of this before. Because every time Helly like tries to do something, Mark's like, it's not gonna work. So you're like, oh, he's tried it all before. Like, this is a shell of who he used to be. And that's why he like wants to help Helly so much, Heliar, because he sees himself in her, right? The person that was like fighting so hard to leave, and eventually you just can't leave, so you like give up. And Helly's like, what do you mean? And Mark is like, well, the code detectors in the elevators, they can still detect like messages and code even if it's on your body. And she's like, what if I write it really weird though? Like, the detector won't be able to recognize it as messages. And then Mark is like, no, it doesn't work, trust me. So then Helly leaves, and then Irving and Dylan are like concerned about her. So Irving suggests that they show Helly to the perpetuity wing, which is like a wing of the floor that's basically a museum with like a whole timeline of how Lumen, the company, like came to be. So it's like how Lumen was created, their purpose, their goal. So Irving's like, what if we bring Helly R to the wing and we can all look through the exhibits together so she can get a better idea of, you know, the purpose of working at Lumen, right? So they all go on like a little field trip, MDR field trip to the little museum. Meanwhile, in the outside world, Devin and Rickon, so Devin is Mark's sister, remember? So Devin and Rickon arrive at Mark's house in the outside world, and they leave a copy of Rickon's like self-help book, because Rickon is like a author wannabe. He wants to be like a famous author, so he writes this self-help book and he places it on Mark's porch, because Mark is at work. He's obviously not home, right? So then after they leave, Miss Selvig, his neighbor, who's also Miss Covell, approaches the porch, and she sees the book on the porch, the self-help book, and she takes it away, and then she sneaks into Mark's house. So she like breaks into his house, And while Petey is there, so Petey is in the basement while she breaks into Mark's house and she's looking around. My train will arrive shortly. I must be out. Perhaps I'll return after my bike ride. No worries, teammate. Thank you for joining. If you weren't here earlier, Miss Selvig, Miss Cobell is basically their boss of the floor. So she is the one that's like punishing them all, basically. And she's his neighbor, which is extra creepy. The what field trip? They like just go to a little museum together. So then she breaks into his house, right? And she's looking around, and Petey hides from her because he recognizes her as their boss, because he remembers everything. So then he hides and then he flees from the house. And later, Miss Cobell returns to Lumen and has Mr. Milchick like check the book for hidden messages because she's afraid that Mark's like sister and brother like hid secret messages in the book for him to find or something like that. So that's why she took the book, and she has Mr. Milchick check for any hidden messages. So then we're back to Mark, Irving, and Dylan on their little field trip with Heliar, right? They go to the museum on the floor. They like go through Lumen's history. And the first exhibit is like wax figures of Lumen's founder, Kier Egan. And the name sounds familiar because that's the name in the survey when Heliar woke up, where it's like, oh, what's Mr. Egan's like favorite breakfast or whatever. So they're looking at all these wax figures. There's the founder, and then his succeeding dynasty, his descendant, Jamie, who's the current CEO. And there's like all these wax figures. And Irving, who's like brainwashed and devoted to Lumen. He's like an ardent devotee of Egan's philosophy. So he starts explaining like various parts of the company's history to Heliar. And he's like emphasizing to Heli like, Lumen is making a positive difference in people's lives. This is what we're working towards. Like, this is why we're doing the work we are. We're improving the lives of everyone outside. This is our mission. Like, this is our goal. And Heli is obviously like, what the hell? So the four continue into like a life-size replica of Kier's like home and stuff like that. And Irving enters a room. It's such a creepy room. It's this room, and the exhibit is like photos of people's smiles. Not even their faces, like just their mouth, like smiling. So the whole wall is covered in pictures of people's smiles. And it's basically supposed to be like, these are all the smiles that we're like making by doing our work to ensure the happiness of everyone on the outside. And Irving's like, look at all these smiles. In fact, there's so many smiles that they switch out the exhibit like every hour to show new smiles. And it's like so creepy. And Heli is like, what in the fresh hell? And Dylan is like obviously not taking the field trip seriously because Dylan's kind of like a really chill, goofy guy. So Irving gets really mad, and Irving's like, you guys aren't taking the Lumen policy seriously, blah 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 blah. And while he's lecturing Dylan and Mark, Heli like sneaks away from them. So then Heli sneaks out, and she ends up breaking a window. Like, she runs to the exit at the stairwell that she first tried to escape through, and she breaks the window with a fire hydrant. And she attempts to like throw a note outside of the door, hoping that like her outside self will read the note about like the hell that they're undergoing inside. Like, she's hoping to convince her outside self to just let her leave. So she sticks the note outside the door, and she's trying to push it through, but then obviously it sets off alarms, right? So the security comes rushing through, and the security pulls her back inside. And by pulling her back inside, the glass of the like window like stabs, scratches, like cuts her entire arm. And then they drag her to the break room. And Mr. Milchick is like, we have tried to be nice and patient with you, but you keep doing this. And so she's forced into the break room where he like opens the screen and it's like the dark room and then the light and everything. And he's like, read this. And she's like, what? And he's like, read it. And she's like, okay. So she reads the script where she's like, I am a stain upon the world, blah, 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 blah. I am making people miserable, blah, 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 blah. And she reads it and she finishes. And she's like, we're done now, right? And Mr. Milchick's like, no, you didn't mean it. Read it again. So then she's like, what? So then she reads it again. And then he's like, no, you didn't mean it. Do it again. So then Helly's like, can I leave? And he's like, no, you can't leave until you read the statement and mean it. So then they enact the same torture method on her that they did to Mark S. And after the shift is over, Helly hasn't left, so we're basically assuming that she's just forced to stay there until it works. But their shift ends, and Mark is looking through photos of the team because as the new like department head, it's his job to replace all the group photos of Petey in it and put in the new photos with Helly R in it, right? Because once again, when somebody quits their job here, their existence is wiped out, and it's basically like they never existed in the first place, which means any evidence of them even having been there also has to be wiped out. So Mark S has to switch out all the photos with Petey in them and then replace them with photos with Helly R. And while he's replacing the photos, he looks a bit sad, and then he pulls out the last group photo of the frame on his desk, and he discovers on the back of the photo is a hand-drawn map of the entire floor, all the hallways. And it's like an exact copy of the map that Petey showed outside Mark, right? And remember he said like, I left something for you when I left the Lumen. So Mark sees this map and he's like, what the hell? Like he doesn't know what it is, obviously, because it's like his inside self. But then it's something that Petey left behind, so he knows it's important, right? And then the scene switches to a convenience store where Petey is like stumbling through the convenience store aisles. He's having severe like hallucinations and like breakdowns. Like his mind is basically like frying itself. And this was after he escaped his house, by the way, because Miss Cobell broke in. So he's in the convenience store and he starts like shouting, and he's like pounding on the like freezer door where they store all the drinks and stuff, the fridge door. And he's like, I don't have enough tokens. Like, I need tokens. Like, please give me tokens or I can't eat. He's like, I don't have tokens. And he's just like babbling. And then the poor like person working at the convenience store is like, what the hell's happening? And Petey's like, I need tokens. I need tokens. Because remember, they can't eat unless they have tokens, right? So then he starts like convulsing kind of thing. This whole thing is such a whiplash to listen to after zoning out, reinstalling. Yeah, it's the show itself is very similar feelings. How far are you? I'm only on like episode 4, I think. I'm not sure. I think I'm on 4. So then, not the food stamps. So then his brain starts like collapsing, and he starts like having a seizure of some kind. There's like blood out of his nose, and he just like collapses. And the person working at the convenience store is like, holy shit, right? So she calls the ambulance, the police, all that. And Mark, who finished his shift in the building, is driving and on his way home. And as he is on his way home, he sees a bunch of ambulances like drive past him. And he has a sinking feeling that something is wrong. So he turns his car around and follows the ambulances. And then they stop at the convenience store. And Mark like kind of sits in his car. And he opens the car door and he like steps out and like looks to see what's happening. And he sees the paramedics escorting Petey out of the convenience store. And Petey looks up and makes eye contact with Mark. And then he starts convulsing and seizing. And then he drops to the ground. And then Mark is obviously like shaken, right? And he watches the paramedics like carry Petey's body away. So Mark is panicking a little bit. He like immediately gets back into his car and drives home. And then in like this kind of panic, he clears out the entire basement. Like any evidence of Petey having stayed there, he like clears it out. He covers up the couch that Petey was sleeping on. He like pushes away all of the evidence that they were going through. And it's kind of like, okay, so he feels like something is deeply wrong. Like something obviously happened to Petey, so he's like, what if it happens to like me, right? So he's trying to clear out any evidence in case like someone is watching or something like that. But you can also interpret it as him just trying to erase any evidence of this like traumatic scene happening, because that's what he did with his wife like dying, right? He just wanted to forget everything. And it's like a theme throughout the show that Mark just can't handle the grief and he'd rather just pretend it never happened. So he does that too, and you're like, oh, maybe it's also that. But then as he's clearing everything out, he finds Petey's cell phone ringing. And then the episode ends. Ah! Brum, brum, brum. And then, next episode, we are back in the break room with Helly R, who is reading the apology statement for the 259th time. And her eyes are red, she's like starting to break down, and then she finishes reading the script again. And for people that weren't here, the scripts that they're forced to read over and over again is basically, like, no matter what mistake you made, even if it's like, oh, you accidentally fell asleep at the table, you read the script and it says, "Forgive me for the harm I have caused this world. None may atone for my actions but me, and only in me shall their stain live on. I am thankful to have been caught, my fall cut short by those with wizened hands. All I can be is sorry, and that is all that I am." So they're forced to read that over and over and over and over again. Like some kind of psychological mental torture. And I compared it to like when police officers will ask someone if they're guilty over and over again until they eventually are like, yes, I'm guilty. Like just to make it stop, right? But it's like even like more amplified. So she's reading the statement for the 259th time. And she's like, please, like, just let me go. Like, I've read it so many times. Like, I'm sorry, okay? I'm sorry. And she starts being like, I'm really sorry, please. Like, I'm so sorry for whatever I did. And then Mr. Milchick is like, no, you can't apologize like that. You have to read the statement and apologize. So it's like, you can't just say you're sorry. Read it again. So then she reads it again and he's like, it's not enough. You don't mean it. So then she keeps reading it. And then the following day, she's forced to do it again because she still didn't pass after like the shift was over. So Mr. Milchick is like, we'll start again tomorrow. So then she reawakens again, and then they start over and over again. And then when he's satisfied, when he ends the video recording, it's revealed that she read the statement 1,072 times until he finally said it was okay. And then he ends the recording, and she is just like a shell of herself, like comes like out of it, and you're like, Jesus Christ. So then she finally passes. And then back in the outside world, remember when Mark found Petey's cell phone? So Mark misses the call on Petey's phone, and then he stashes it away, and he notices several missed calls from the same like blocked number. And then it switches back to the innie world, so the office, right? And in the workplace, Bert, the person that Irving met during wellness check, Bert shows up to MDR, so their workplace, because he's from another department. And Bert invites the entire MDR staff to go to optics and design, which is where he works. I should put that. Optics. So he's like, hey, why don't you all come to optics and design? I want to invite all of you to come look. But only Irving accepts the offer, because Irving already likes Bert. They had a conversation. They bonded over art. And Dylan hates optics and design. He's like, they're demons! Oh, you are probably here to murder us all. And then you realize it's because the departments are so separated that they all came up with theories about each other. So to Dylan, he's like, everyone in optics and design are psychopaths. They're lying psychopaths and they're gonna kill us all. And that's what he thinks. So all these departments villainize each other. That's why they don't interact, which is probably what Lumen wanted. But Irving is like, Dylan G, what's wrong with you? Be nice. So then Irving B follows Bert G. And he goes to optics and design with him. And Bert shows him his artwork. And then they grow close because I think they do painting restoration, or they do painting themselves too. So he's showing Irving his artwork, and then they start getting really close to each other. They make little jokes together. And then they're clearly bonding. And even someone like me who misinterprets things all the time, I could tell it was some kind of romantic bonding. So at this point, I'm like, oh my god, it's legit old man, Yaoi. And then they're bonding together, and they're really enjoying their time together. And then but then you get kind of scared because your relationships aren't allowed, remember? So then they're chatting about the painting, and then Bert slowly tries to brush his hand against Irving's hand. It's this little moment. But then Irving panics and he pulls his hand away, and then he's like, I should go now. So then he leaves, and you're like, oof. Oof. Oh, that's sad. Oh. But you can tell that Irving also likes him. He just panicked. So then on his way back to MDR though, Irving finds a book on the conference table of the hallway room, and he looks at the book, and it's the book that Miss Covell took and then gave to Mr. Milchick. It's Rickon's self-help book that he put on Mark's porch, and then Miss Covell took it, remember? And she gave it to Mr. Milchick because she's like, check this for any secret messages. And Mr. Milchick leaves it on the table. And then Irving finds the book, the self-help book, and he's looking at the book, and he's like, what the? And the author's name is Rickon. So then Irving takes the book, and he's like, I should probably bring this with me. Meanwhile, Helly finds out that Mark kept Petey's map of Lumen's hallways in his drawer, because they're supposed to throw away the group photos with Petey, but Mark kept that one photo because of the map on the back. So then Helly R finds the map in his drawer, and Helly's like, what the hell is this? You've been giving me so much shit for trying to escape this place, and here you are with a map in your drawer. And she's like, you stupid hypocrite. And Mark S is like, give that back to me, it's not what you think it is. And then Dylan is like, whoa, what the hell is that? And Dylan's like, we have to report this to management. And then Mark is like, no. He's like, you don't understand. And Dylan's like, oh my god, this is so serious, we have to report this. And then Helly is like, you stupid hypocrite. And then Mark S is like, okay, you know what, fine, I don't care. So he takes the map, and then Helly starts going off on him, and Helly R is like, do you even care that your best friend is gone? He's basically dead. Lumen basically killed him because he doesn't exist anymore. Your best friend is gone and you don't even care. You're heartless. Like, you don't care about your best friend. Don't you guys bond? And she's just like going off on him like this, right? And it starts to like break away at Mark S's whole like mental state. So eventually Mark freaks out and he's like, fine, you know what? Yeah, I don't care. I don't care about Petey and I don't care that he's dead, okay? Let's just do work. Like, that's what we're meant to do. And he puts the map into like, a shredder. He just shreds it up. And then it's just like really, really, really awkward afterwards. What if it's old dude behind the screen? No, what old dude? And then, so he shreds up the drawing and he's like, you know what? I don't care anymore. And then Helly is like, wait, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to like say that about you. Like, you didn't have to do that. And Mark S is like, no, I don't care. Let's just do our job. So he's like obviously shut down. And then things go back. But then Irving comes back to the office, right? And Irving shows Mark and Dylan the book he found. And he's like, I found this book in the conference room. It's like some kind of self-help book. And it's written by a Rickon. And there's a personal note inside. And they look at the note. And then are you an old dude behind the screen, be honest? Oh, is that what they were asking? I thought they were like, what if the person behind the macro data refinement screen was some old guy? I was like, what old guy? Yeah, I am an old dude behind the screen. And then, first time chatter, that's true. I was like, damn. Severance caused someone to chat for the first time. Anyways, I thought it was like just someone random interested in Severance. Sad. Where was I? So inside of the self-help book, they find a note addressed to Mark from Rickon. Because in the outside world, Rickon is Mark's brother-in-law, right? And he left that book for Mark on his porch. So he put a note inside that was like, hey, Mark, this is for you. Read my book. And then Irving finds the book and he's like, Dylan, Mark, look at this book I found. And he's like, there's a note inside for Mark. And Mark is like, huh? He's like, never seen the book before. He does not recognize the author. And then he like, you can watch, guys, but be careful. Be careful, guys. What if it's an old person? No, old people! That's like kind of funny because it implies that like if it is an old person, you guys are in danger or something. Oh, what he gonna do? He's not some old guy out for your credit card. Yes. If I was an old person, you would immediately give me your social security number and your credit card. Aki? Oh my god! Bro, what? Oh my god, guys, be careful. I think C6D5, CXD5 might be a beep. If Aki was old. Wait, are they implying that if it's an old person, they could technically be like a... That's crazy! Anyways, so then... where was I? Right, so Mark like sees the personal note from Rickon, right? And then he's like, I don't recognize this person. And he sees the face on the book cover too. And he's like, I don't recognize the book. And Irving's like, if you don't know the book, then why is the note addressed to you? Fastest vans in the West. That was really fast. You saw that word and you were like, oh, nope. Sniped them. That was so funny. I was okay with them being around because I was like, it's fine. I like giving people the benefit of doubt. So I was like, oh, they're probably just concerned. Or something, I don't know, or trolling, I don't really know. And even if they are trolling, it's like, I don't really mind, because like, it's kind of funny to like go back and forth with them and like talk. But then, when I saw that word, I was like, oh! And then you like sniped them right away. That was crazy. Yeah, it was getting kind of weird. when that happens, it's over. Mods sever his ligaments in his heel so that he can no longer walk or something like that. However it goes. Mods break his knees. Yeah, it escalated so fast. It was like, what if it's an old person? Like, what if it's a criminal? Lobotomy it is. So yeah, Mark doesn't recognize the book at all, and Irving's like, you are highly suspicious because this book is addressed to you. And then Dylan is like, yeah, Mark is suspicious because we also found that map in his drawer. So they're like, what are you planning, Mark S? And Mark S is like, I don't know, man. And then Mark wants to report it, but then Dylan is like, wait, don't report the book. Because if you report the book, then they're going to involve you because the book was given to you, and now we're all involved too, so they're gonna punish all of us. And then Dylan's like, don't report it. And then Mark is like, okay. So then Mark hides the book in his desk. And then we see that when Mark leaves after like a shift, Dylan secretly takes the book out of his desk and starts reading. So he starts reading this self-help book, right? And then Helly grabs a paper cutter, and then she basically marches into Miss Cobell's office with the paper cutter, like the one with the huge blade, you know, like the shing shing shing. So she holds the paper cutter and she puts her arm in it, and she walks into Miss Cobell's office, and she's like, you better let me record a resignation request. I want to record a video requesting my outside self to quit and resign, or else I will cut my arm off right now. And then Miss Cobell's like, holy shit. So Miss Cobell's like, whoa, hold on. Like, okay, I'll hear you out, like, please. And Mr. Milchick is also like, oh, Jesus Christ. So they're like, okay, we'll let you record a video. And then Helly R is like, do I look like I'm fucking around? And the blade is like on her arm. And they're like, okay. So then they let her record a video requesting resignation to her outside self. And then Cobell is like, alright, fine. And then Helly takes the recording with her and leaves the elevator. So she goes up the elevator. And then immediately the elevator door opens again because, like, once again, no time passes between like their outside self and their inside self to the inside self. So it's like she went up the elevator and then immediately came back down. And she looks down and there's a new recording in her hand. So she's like, oh, what? So then she goes back into the office and puts the new recording into the TV. And the recording opens up and it's Helly R. It's her outside self, right? And her outside self is speaking to her. And she says, like, I am denying your request because you are not a person. I am a person. I'm the person living. You are not a person, and you do not have control over your life because you are a thing. You're not a person. You don't get to decide things. And it's like really, really cruel. And just like cold and so like unethical. This whole show is just unethical. But basically Helly's outside self. I saw that scene somewhere. It's so messed up. And she's like, you're not a person. You may think you are, but you're not. And then and she was like, if you ever threaten to harm my body again, I will make your life so miserable and that you won't even want to live anymore. Kind of thing. So then that like night after the shift, Mark receives a news notification reporting that PD had died from an unknown ailment. And Mark visits his funeral, even though like he's not supposed to know PD at all. But he shows up to PD's funeral. Miss Cobell is also there, except she's posing as his neighbor, Miss Selvig, right? So Miss Selvig shows up. Miss Selvig is like, Mark, what are you doing here? Did you know him? And she's like trying to suss out if he remembers anything. But Mark, who like doesn't recognize her at all, is like, Oh, yeah, I heard that he used to work at Lumen, so I thought I would just show up, you know. And then you need 18 floors to tie all these plot threads together, literally. And then he's like, yeah, I heard he worked at Lumen, so I decided to just show up, you know, for like solidarity, because if he worked at Lumen, that means I must have known him, right? And it's interesting because you're like, oh, thank God, Mark has like survival skills. Because, he doesn't know Miss Selvig is Miss Cobell, right? But he still lies to her because he feels like something is wrong. So he doesn't straight up just be like, yeah, I knew him. He's like, oh yeah, I heard he like worked at Lumen. So he's like kind of lying, and you're like, yes, Mark. Yes, you're smart enough. Thank God you're not one of those protagonists that would have been like, oh yeah, I knew him. You know, it's like he knows something is wrong, so he's like lying. And then, so they attend the funeral, and he sees Petey's wife and daughter. And it just like really fucks him up, because he's like seeing the family of this guy who died after like coming to him for help and warning him. And the funeral service is like, they play a video of Petey singing and playing guitar of his daughter, who's also singing and playing guitar. And it's just like a whole video of them like bonding and singing together. And his daughter slowly starts to cry, and Mark is just sitting there. And he starts to become so affected by the funeral that he just can't stay there anymore. And it's like, you can assume it's like maybe something deep inside of him like knows that he knew this person. Like maybe something deep inside his brain was like, Pat was my best friend at work. Like you're not really sure, but the funeral really affects him, and he just can't stay there anymore. And meanwhile, while the funeral is going on, okay, this part was crazy. But Miss Selvig, while the whole funeral was going on, she like sneaks into the room with Petey's casket with a drill in her hand, like a power drill. And you're like, hell no. So she sneaks into the casket room, and she makes sure that nobody is like watching her, because they're all distracted by like the beautiful funeral video playing. And she opens the casket, and you're like, please don't do this. Obviously she does. So she opens the casket, and she starts drilling like into Petey's head until there's like a small, like a hole big enough so that she can like retrieve the severance chip inside of his brain. Yeah, cause she wasn't able to, cause he like died out of their control, right? So she slowly retrieves the severance chip from his brain, and then she closes the casket. But as this is going on is when Mark is leaving the funeral. So Mark gets up, starts leaving, and he runs into Miss Selvig, who's like coming out of the casket room, and he's like, oh, Miss Selvig, what were you doing in there? And she's like, oh, I was just, you know, giving like my thoughts and prayers. I was just giving my thoughts and prayers. And Mark is like, oh, I see. And she starts getting suspicious. So she's like, why? What's wrong, Mark? Why are you leaving? Was it just too sad for you? And Mark is like, yeah, I guess the whole funeral thing is just like too much for me. I just feel sad, so I don't really want to stay anymore. And she's like, oh, that's understandable. She's like, take care. So Mark leaves, and he's like so affected by this death that he ends up visiting the tree where his wife died during her fatal car crash, and he just kind of stands there. And then the next day, Miss Cobell goes over to Miss Casey, and she's like, Miss Casey, can you perform a special wellness check on Mark? And Miss Casey's like, oh, sure. And you're like, special wellness check? I know what the wellness check is, but like a special one? What are they gonna do to him? So then Miss Casey's like, yeah, okay. So Mark goes to wellness check, and Miss Cobell is like watching the whole therapy session on her computer. And Miss Casey is like, Mark, have you ever heard of like people using clay to like sculpt out their feelings? And then he's like, no, not really. So she's like playing music and she gives him a ball of clay and she's like, would you like to try that? And he's like, okay. So Mark starts like sculpting something out of the clay. And Miss Casey is like watching him, and so is Miss Cobell. They're just like watching him, and he's slowly sculpting something. And it slowly turns into a tree, and you're like, oh, he's sculpting a tree. But then you're like, wait, he's sculpting a tree! Because the previous day, he visited the tree that his wife died at, right? Which he's not supposed to have any memory of. But then now any Mark is like sculpting this tree out of clay. So Miss Cobell is like, something's happening. They're all malfunctioning. And then Irving goes back to visit Bert, and he's like, Bert, hey, you stopped coming to see me, like, after we looked at the paintings together. And Bert is like, oh, I just assumed that you got scared and were, like, upset, you know, after that happened. And Irving's like, what happened? And Bert's like, you know, like, when I, like, touched her hand. And Irving's like, oh, no, I wasn't. And then they have, like, this little talk where they like clear up the misunderstanding, where Irving was like, oh, I left because I was embarrassed. And Bert is like, I was embarrassed for like even making a move, you know? And Irving's like, there's nothing to be embarrassed about. So then they kind of like clear up the misunderstanding, and he goes with Bert to optics and design. And this part is like kind of weird because MDR is told that there's only 2 people working in optics and design, because in the past, the people in optics and design, OD, staged like a rebellion. So all the Amies rebelled and like a lot of people were hurt. So they're told that's why there's only 2 people working in optics and design. But then Bert takes Irving to optics and design, and he finds out that there's more than 2 people. There's like 7 people working there. So Irving is like, what the hell? Like, this is kind of weird. And they're all working in like this massive, unlabeled like room. And then we cut back to Helly R. And she says bye to Dylan, who's like clocking out. And in her hand, she's like holding an extension cord. And you're like, oh, what's she doing with that? So she takes the extension cord with her. She like kind of hides it. And then she ends her shift and she goes to the elevator. And then you see her take like a trash can from the hallway and puts it in the elevator. And then she climbs on top of the trash can. And you're like, oh. You're like, oh, okay. So what you think happens does happen. So she ties the thing like at the top, and then, you know, like makes a news. And then it happens. She like kicks the can away, and she attempts to take her own life. And then that's how that episode ends. So you're like left shocked, because you're like, what the hell? Oh my god, after that episode, I was like, I thought it couldn't get worse, but it did. Anyways, so the next episode, right? Can you imagine like watching season 1 while episodes were coming out weekly? Imagine ending it there and you have to wait another week. Jesus. So the next episode begins with Mark S. Clocking out for the day, and he's heading to the elevator because, you know, he's done with his job. And then, as he goes to the elevator, he sees Helly's like feet hanging. And she's like kicking and struggling. It looks like she's struggling. So he immediately starts freaking out. He's like, oh my god, oh my god, oh my god. And then he like drops whatever and he like runs to her, and he like tries to hold her up so that like he can breathe. And then the security guard comes because Mark is like calling for help. So the security guard is like, ah, damn it. So he cuts the cord, and then Helly like crumples to the ground, and then the security guard like pushes Mark to get out of the elevator. He's like, leave. Or he takes Helly R out, and then he like makes Mark S leave in the elevator. He's like, just leave. And then Mark is like, is she okay? Is she dead? And the security guard is like, leave. So then he closes the door, and Mark S is like forced to go up and switch out with his like outside self. And then the following day, Mark finds Miss Cobell and Mr. Milchick waiting for him, like outside of the elevator. And he's like, what happened to Helly? Is she alive? And they're like, yes, Helly R is in the hospital now. She'll return in a few days since her Audi refused to quit. And then Miss Cobell blames Mark for the incident because she's like, you were the department head. You were supposed to be watching like all your coworkers, and you let this happen right under your nose. This is all your fault. Obviously Mark is like, what the but then Miss Cobell doesn't tell the board. So like the higher ups, she doesn't tell the higher ups about how Helly attempted to take her life, because I assume she like just doesn't want to get in trouble with them. And then the security guard takes the chip that Miss Cobell took from Petey's brain, and she tells him like, oh, can you look into this for me? Like run it through some tests and stuff. I want to see if like Petey's memory was reintegrated. So then the security guard does that. He comes back and he's like, you were right. Petey was reintegrated. His memories were like combined together at the time of his death. So then the scene shifts to Mark, and you find Mark secretly reading Rickon's self-help book in the office. And then in the book, it's like kind of funny, because the show does like have humorous moments, right? It's like kind of dark funny. But the self-help book is like literally what you think it is, where it's like, challenge authority, and it's like think deeply. Like it's one of those things you're like, wow, that's deep, but it's like not that deep. One of those. It's just like one of those self-help books, and Mark is reading it, and Mark is like so interested, and he's like, whoa, this is amazing. Which is funny, because the Mark on the outside reading his brother-in-law's book would have been like, what is this BS, right? But because like these innies have like no contact with the outside world, to them this like corny self-help book is like the holy grail, where it's like, have you ever considered why you're doing the like work that you are? What is the purpose of it? It's like the higher ups don't care about you. Like it's the typical like, wow, that's so deep stuff. But then Mark S is reading it. He's like, wow, this is incredible. He's like reading it. And then where am I? Yeah, so after his shift is over, he clocks out, and we're back to outside Mark. So outie Mark goes to a birthing lodge, and you're like, birthing lodge? Yeah, they start to believe. So after he clocks out, he sees his phone. It's all these missed calls from Rickon, and Rickon is like, hey, your sister Devin, like, I think she's about to give birth. Are you coming to the lodge? Like, we're looking for you. It's like, hey, we don't know if you're allowed to use your phone during your work, but she's like about to give birth, like, please come. So it's like all these missed calls, and then Mark is like, ah, shit, right? So then he immediately rushes to the birthing lodge, where Devin is starting to have contractions. And you find out that in the world they're in, when someone is about to give birth, they're sent to like a little birthing like retreat, like where all these moms are like about to give birth, and they're like all in these little like cabins. It's like super weird. It's like a birthing getaway or something. So Devin goes for a walk, and she's like, okay, I think my contraction stopped. I'm gonna go for a walk. What? Yeah, it's really freaky. So she goes for a walk because she wants to get coffee, and then she finds like the neighboring cabin is a fellow like expectant mom named Gabby. Um, so Devin like knocks on the door and she's like, "Oh, so sorry to bother you. Could I like borrow some coffee? Cause I see you're making some." And Gabby is like really weird about it. She's like, sure, yeah, okay. She's just like really weird. And you think it's just like she just doesn't like Devin, but you find out later there's like reasoning behind it. So she gets the coffee, blah blah blah. She returns, and then Mark and Rickon start having like conversations. And Rickon is like, "Did you read the book I gave you? Like, did you read my self-help book?" And Mark is like, "Your what?" And Rickon's like, I left a copy of my book on your porch. Did you not get it? Like, you can tell me the truth. You didn't read it, did you? And Mark is like, "No, I didn't even get the book. Like, I don't know what you're talking about." And Rickon's like, "Oh my god, did someone steal my book off your porch? Like, why would they do that? Like, it's not an Amazon package. Why would they steal my self-help book off your porch?" And Mark is like, "I guess that's what happened, because I never even got the book." So they're discussing this. Yeah, he's like, "Wow, I must be so famous. Someone want me." So they're discussing the book. And then, I believe Mark starts talking to Rickon about Lumen. I forgot what they discussed, but he's like, they're talking about the company itself, and then Devin goes into labor, so like the conversation's cut short, obviously. And then Helly R wakes up in the elevator. So she's like, "Oh shit, I'm still alive." She wakes up in the elevator, and Mark is there to help her, and Mark is like, "Oh my god, are you okay?" And Heliara's like, "Yeah, I guess." So then Mark S helps her like transition back into the office and start working again. Because Miss Cobell is like, "Just put her back to work. Everything should be fine." Except Miss Casey is now assigned to their office. So Miss Casey just sits in a chair and like watches Helly R to make sure she doesn't like, I don't know, take her life again or like exhibit signs of sadness. And every time Helly R like sighs or something or does anything, Miss Casey like takes notes. She's like, "Helly, are you sad?" And she says like, "A hug is available upon request." And Helly R is like, "Yeah, no, I don't need a hug." So Miss Casey's just watching her work the whole time, just in case. And you kind of like grow on Miss Casey. You're like, she's kind of cute. Like, she's just there to like do her job. You know, it's like she didn't do anything wrong. Did she just breathe? And Miss Casey keeps like asking, it's like, "Are you okay? Are you sad? Do you feel like you want to hurt yourself?" And Heliar's like, no, I'm fine, okay? Just like leave me alone and take your notes or whatever. And then, while using the printer, Irving's like printing out copies of something. And then all of a sudden, like a copy of a painting comes out of the printer, even though it's not what he was photocopying at all. And it's a disturbing painting that depicts like the optics and design employees slaughtering the MDR employees. So it's kind of like referring or referencing the whole like incident that Lumen told MDR about, where it's like, oh, optics and design suddenly like rebelled against the company and they killed a bunch of people. So then Irving sees this painting like depicting the event, and it shows optics and design employees like slaughtering MDR employees. So he's like panicking. He's like, oh my god, it's real, right? It consists of like the rumors of the whole situation. So then Milchick arrives, and Milchick is like, oh my goodness, Irving B, I'm so sorry you saw that. That must have been a mistake. I sent the painting to the wrong printer by accident. I was going to use it as a joke for Miss Cobell, But I guess it came to this painting. I'm so sorry, Irving. But then it's revealed that he intentionally sent that painting copy to Irving to discourage him from visiting Bert in optics and design anymore, because they're trying to cut off communication between the two departments. They don't want Irving to learn too much. So Mr. Milchick does that to scare him. Thank you for the redeems. Yeah, I've just been going. So yeah, but instead of discouraging Irving from visiting optics and design again, he decides to visit one more time, because he's like, I need to know answers, right? You can't just show this to me. So Irving leaves, and then Irving's gone from the office. So it's just Dylan G and Heliar and Mark S. And Mark intentionally spills coffee, and he's like, oh no, my notepads are all covered in coffee. What do I do? And Miss Casey is like, oh, I could go get new notepads for you. So then Mark is like, yeah, that'd be great, Miss Casey. So then Miss Casey leaves the room, which leaves Helly R unsupervised, right? So then Mark is like, okay, Helly, come with me. We need to go through the hallway. And then Helly is like, okay. So then Helly R follows Mark, right? And they leave the room. And Mark S shows Helly that actually he's been trying to reassemble the map that PD made. And he's like, I've been slowly trying to recall what the map looked like, and I'm drawing it out, and I would love if you would help me. Because this whole time Helly's been pretty rebellious against them. So Mark is like, oh, Helly would want to help. But then Helly refuses. And she's like, I'm not doing this anymore. I've tried so hard to escape this place, and it's just not working. I'm no longer going to do it. I don't want to get in trouble and be punished again. It doesn't work. So then, as he's trying to convince her, they find a really weird room. They open the room, and the whole place is it looks like a hill with grass and stuff. And in the middle of the room, there's a man feeding baby goats. So it's just all these goats, going, and the man's feeding a baby goat. And Mark S and Heliar are standing there, and they're like, what the hell are we looking at? Why are there goats on the floor? And what is this room? And it's pretty obvious they weren't supposed to stumble upon that room. And then may I request you to check unban request? Oh no, did I get my first unban request? What did they say? Oh my god. This is my first unban request, guys. Oh my god, I don't even know how to check it. Hold on. Where is it under? Where's unban request under? Yeah, it's probably the person. This is my first unban request. I can't believe it. Moderation? Moderation. Admin view, mod view. Oh. Okay. God. I can't believe it's my first one. Apologies, folks. Mod view. Community. Oh, it's here. What the? I hope this person's okay. All it says is, in doing your Illuminati shit, but then they misspelled Illuminati and they wrote Illuminati. I hope this person's okay. It sounds like they're like skitzing out. Oh well, best of luck, man. I don't know what to tell you. Good luck. Should I reply? Deny. I hope you feel better soon. I hope you feel better. I hope you feel better someday. I don't know. Good luck. Good luck, man. Cited as old man. Should I? No, that's kind of mean. Old guy. No, that's kind of mean. Wait, actually, why am I saying that's kind of mean when they called me something awful? What am I saying? I mean, I do feel kind of bad because it seems like something's going on. But they did call me something god-awful. Wait, why am I worried about being mean? Yeah, you're right. Okay. Signed the old man. The old guy. Hope you feel better someday. Oh, man. Alright, I'm sending it. I would not respond. You think so? But then you have to like type something, I think, if you deny them. Oh wait, no, it's optional. Never mind. Hold on. Let me sort through the possibilities. I'm afraid to respond and like make his mental state worse. Denial isn't really a response anyway. Yeah, that's true. I don't know, it seems like they're going through it. Maybe I should add to it. I'll screenshot it so I can remember what I wrote. Yeah, I think I'll just deny. It seems like they're going through something. I don't want to make it worse. Because it's not normal behavior. Alright, I'll delete this. Yeah, it's weird. That's the thing too, where it's like there's probably something else going on because it's like still trying to like get a message across even like when they're banned. I don't know. Hope they get better. But the Illuminati, I was not expecting that. I was expecting them to like call me something really bad again. But then it was like that. I was like, oh man, there's something deeply wrong. And then they spelled Illuminati wrong. Oh, poor thing. Anyways, where was I? That was my first unban request though. Crazy. In 3 years? Whoa. Oh yeah, so they stumble across the room with the goats and they're like, what the hell is actually happening? And the viewer is like also more confused than ever because we're like, why are there suddenly baby goats? And then Miss Cobell, it turns out, is actually watching the whole, like all of them on her computer. So she sees like Helly and Mark stumble upon the room. My apologies for interrupting. No worries. I'm probably gonna have to end soon anyway, so we'll have to do a part 2. I think he joined in the middle of the recap. He must be... Oh no! You think you think it worsened it? I'm like, that's true. I'm like talking about all the Severance stuff. That sounds awful. Hi, Ime! So yeah. And Miss Cobell is watching all of them on her screen. And then... she's watching them on the cameras, and the security guard is like, why are you letting the innies discover the other departments? Like, this is bad. It's against the rules. You're giving them like free roam, free will. And Miss Cobell says, well, the best way to tame a prisoner is to convince them that they are free. So it's like, is she doing it for more control? Or maybe she does want them to discover more things, or she's just like doing an experiment of some kind. Anyways, so that's what she says. Meanwhile, Irving finds Bert in the conference room. And because Miss Casey on her way back tells Irving like, oh, Bert G is in the conference room. He's probably looking for you. So you can tell that Miss Casey is like actually kind of empathetic. Like she kind of just wants to help them. She even like tips Irving off about Bert because she knows that like Irving and Bert like each other. Washing one's face dramatically while singing Baka Mita is truly the path to inner peace. Oh, real. So Irving finds Bert in the conference room. And he's like, Bert, what are you doing in there? But then before they can talk, Dylan like rushes over. And Dylan G is like, no, Irving, don't talk to him. And then he locks the door to conference room. So he locks Bert inside the conference room. And Irving's like, what the hell is wrong with you, Dylan? And Bert's like, let me out. And Dylan's like, no, you can't talk to Bert, Irving. He's going to hurt you. Because Dylan, like, strongly believes in what Lumen told them about, like, how optics and design, like, had a whole, like, coup. And then they, like, killed MDR people. So he, like, just completely believes it. And then, Bert is like, I'm so confused. What's happening? And then Bert, like, across the door is like, please let me out. And then Irving's like, Bert, why would you guys lie about the number of employees in O&D? Like, you guys are so suspicious. You lie about the amount of people in there. And then there's all these rumors that you, like, killed a bunch of us in the past. And then, Bert is like, okay, it's because we don't trust MDR. That's why we lie about how many employees are there. Because we're afraid that you guys will hurt us. Yeah, Irving and Bert just want old man Yowie. It's so sad. And then, Bert is like, well, there's rumors about you guys, okay? You guys are dangerous. That's why we're afraid to tell you how many employees are working with us. And then, you're like, wait a second. Because MDR has like all these rumors about optics and design, right? It's like they're murderers. But then it turns out optics and design also have rumors about MDR. And it's the same rumors where they're like, they're murderers. So then, Irving's like, what? What are you talking about? And then, Irving, is like, what rumors? And then Bert is like, well, they say that you, like, kill and eat people. And Irving's like, what? And then Bert's like, it's just stupid rumors, okay? And there's, like, a really stupid one. And Irving's like, what is it? What do they say about us? And Bert is like, well, they say that everyone in MDR has a pouch. And Dylan's like, a pouch? Like a kangaroo? And Bert's like, yeah, they say you guys have a pouch and stuff. And so it's like hitting everyone that like these two departments just have like random ass rumors about each other, and it's probably planted there to like separate them, right? Yeah, yo, what the hell? So then MVU exactly. So then Irving opens the door, lets Bert out of the conference room, and Bert takes Dylan and Irving down to optics and design, where they find a painting there exactly identical to the painting that Irving was scared of. Like the painting depicting the past rebellion where O&D like killed a bunch of MDR people. But instead, on that painting, it's the MDR people killing the O&D people. So the story that the O&D people are told is that there was a rebellion and the MDR people killed you guys. So they're being told the same story, just like different versions. And then, yeah, just crazy. Meanwhile, Mark tells Helly R that he's happy to have Helly on his team, and he apologizes for not doing more to help her because Mark S is like, I feel like I've just been acting out at you because you're a replacement for Petey, and that made me upset that they could just replace Petey like that. And Helly's like, you're forgiven. You know what? I'm happy to help you complete Petey's drawing of the map. And then, just as Miss Casey returns to the office to like continue observing them, Bert and Irving, Bert takes Irving and Dylan to O&D's like actual room there, like the one with all the 7 workers, and he introduces them as like his friends to the rest of the team. And then the episode ends there. So now you're like, okay, all the departments are like merging now. And then, let me see, should I end it on this next episode? Oh yes, this next episode is a good one to end on. A cliffhanger. And then I'll continue part 2 like Saturday maybe. So, or maybe I should continue it Wednesday, like just to be consistent. And then I'll do Friday and Saturday Yakuza. No! Sorry guys, to keep you hooked. Yeah, I'll continue Wednesday, so there's not like huge time in between. Okay. So next episode starts, and the security guard calls Miss Cobell, and he's like, okay, I found out what happened. So the security guard tells Miss Cobell that an ex-employee at Lumen, I think her name's Ragabi, maybe I'm pronouncing it wrong, but an ex-employee at Lumen named Ragabi was the one that was responsible for reintegrating Petey. And like you can kind of assume that she was probably working as one of like the surgeons or scientists that were working on the Severance chip and like put it into his brain. So then in the outside world, Mark returns home and he retrieves Petey's phone. He takes out the battery and throws it in the trash because he wants to like cut off all communication with anything that could be dangerous, since you know what happened to Petey. And then back in the office, Bert takes Irving and to a room full of plants, and he's like, oh, we can use this room like just for ourselves, like let's have a talk together, you know. So Irving confesses that he has feelings for Bert, but then he says he's not ready to commit to a relationship. And you're like, oh, this relationship is progressing. And it's like really sweet because it's just like old people, you know, like old people falling in love. But then you're like kind of scared because also relationships are not allowed. So it's this like foreboding feeling that's like they're gonna be found out and something's gonna happen, you know. It's pretty obvious by now this show is not that happy. And then back in the real world, Devin, after giving birth, she runs into Gabby, a woman that she met at the birthing lodge. Remember the one that she like... Oh my god, my VTuber model just died. Hold on. Okay, so she runs into Gabby, who's the same person, the woman next door, who's like was also giving birth, and that she asked for coffee, remember? So she meets Gabby again. And, yeah, she brought her coffee from. She's like, hey, Gabby, oh my gosh, how are you? How's the kid? Like, congrats. But Gabby does not recognize her at all. And Gabby's like, yeah. And Devin's like, remember me from, you know, the birthing lodge? Remember? I borrowed coffee from you? And Gabby's like, yeah, okay. And then, so Devin's just like, what is going on? Like, she's so confused, and she's like, does this woman just like hate me or something? Like, why is she acting so weird? And then the viewer too is like, either you're like, okay, either you're like a guy where you're like something is wrong, or you're like, oh my god, this woman sucks. she like so snobby. So then Gabby's husband, his name's Angelo, joins Gabby. And Devin is like, oh, what did you say you would name your baby? So when Devin met the mom, Gabby, she was like, what are you gonna name your kid? And Gabby was like, oh, I think I'll name him Lawrence or something. Yeah, I'll name him Lawrence. But then Gabby asks the question again, like, hey, it's your baby, Lawrence, right? And Gabby's like, no, that's not his name. So you're like, what? Is she severed? You picked it up so fast. Yes. So this brings a whole other, like, messed up part of Severance. Because you realize that at the birthing lodge, the moms there are severed. So their severed person is the one that gives birth. And the implications of that is so fucked up. Because in terms of severance, okay, so they call it lifespans, basically. So for example, if your severed person has a 6-hour workday, on the first day, they work 6 hours. So that means that they were alive for 6 hours. So they were alive for a total of 6 hours. And then time stops until the severed person comes back again. And then time continues. So the second day finishes. And that's 12 hours, which means that the severed person has been alive for 12 hours. So then you think about the birthing lodge, right? And when the mom goes there, she gets severed into a new person. And like I said, the new person is like their own individual self with like their own soul, own feelings, own memories, right? So in terms of the workplace, it's already like fucked up. But then you think about at the birthing lodge, this whole new person is created just to give birth. Yeah. So they basically wake up and are just told that they're gonna give birth. Like they wake up and they're like, who am I? And then it's like, oh, I'm pregnant and I'm supposed to give birth. And that's all they know. Like that's the entire span of their existence. It's just like come into existence, be told they're pregnant and be pregnant and then give birth and that's it. And it is so messed up because even in the conversation with Devin and Gabby when she was severed, they like had that whole discussion. She's like, oh, what are you gonna name your kid? And Gabby's like, I'm gonna name him Lawrence. And she's like really happy. Like she already feels like really close to her child, right? But then after they give birth, they're just like gone. It's so messed up. So it just implies like there's even worse than we thought about like the Severance program. Wanga. Wanga. Welcome. Scam hash. Hash brown. Yummy. Where was I? I got distracted. I was like, okay. So then Devin is like absolutely confused because she's like, this is so weird. Well, I started watching this show recently. English not good. Oh, don't worry about it. Why you call me weird? I didn't call you weird. I called you hash brown because of hash in your name. And then, oh, were you talking to were you talking to Guy? Never mind. And then, yeah, the show is so good. Also, don't worry, your English is fine. Don't worry about it. But yeah, we're like recapping. I forgot which episode. After this episode, though, I'm gonna end stream and then we'll continue. What? Did you call them weird? Like somewhere else, maybe? And then, where was I? Right, so she meets Gabby, and then Gabby doesn't remember her. Also, her child has a different name, so Devin's like, this is so freaking weird. And then, what happens, basically, is that Miss Casey is blamed for Helly leaving the room. Because Miss Casey was assigned to watch over Helly, right? But then, technically, Mark S. like tricked her and made Miss Casey leave the room to retrieve more notepads, and then Mark S. snuck Helly R out of the room, right? But then the fault falls on Miss Casey, because Miss Casey was assigned to watch Helly. So Miss Cobell is like, Miss Casey, you failed at your job to watch Helly. You are being sent to the break room. And we're all like, oh my god, not the break room. And then Mark is like, wait, no, it's not her fault. It's my fault. I'm the one that like tricked her, and then I'm the one that like brought Helly R out with me. And then but they don't listen to the excuse, and they're just like, Miss Casey, go to the break room. So then Miss Casey is taken away and sent to the break room, sadly. Miss Casey, no. And then Miss Cobell is like, from now on, MDR, you will have no more hallway privileges because you're also behind schedule and you keep breaking rules, so you're just not allowed to leave the room. So she takes away hallway privileges, which means that Irving can't visit Bert anymore. You know, that's it. You're the one who banned earlier. What? Did you come back with another account? Man. And then... where was I? Right, so Mark S gets really annoyed that they're like being penalized and stuff, right? And also that Miss Casey is being punished even though it's his fault. So then Mark is like, you know what, Irving? I don't care anymore. Bring me to O&D. And then Irving's like, yeah, hell yeah. Because Mark S just loses it. He's like, you know what? I'm not gonna listen anymore. Let's just all like rebel or something. So then Irving brings all of his coworkers to O&D to see Bert. But they don't know that like Miss Cobell is actually watching the whole thing. Like she's watching them all leave, basically. So then they meet Bert and his colleagues, and Mark S is like, hey, we need to work together as like two separate departments. We need to work together to uncover like whatever the heck Lumen is making us do. Because Mark S and Helly R told them that like they saw baby goats and stuff. And it's like, what the hell does that mean? So it's like something really weird is going on at this company. And then Mark S is like, let's go, folks. So then O&D and MDR kind of team up together. And Mark is like, we need to work together to find out what the hell is going on. And then Mr. Milchick arrives. And Mr. Milchick is like, whoa, hold on. You're not allowed to be here. So then he forces everyone to return back to MDR. And then Dylan, before they leave O&D, he like takes something from the room, but you don't really know what it is. It looks like a card. So he steals a card from the room and puts it in his pocket, which like obviously violates rules. And then Mark is sent to the break room for like starting this whole rebellion. And on his way to the break room, he meets Miss Casey, who's on her way out of the break room. And they like kind of chat for a bit, and Mark is like, I'm sorry, Miss Casey, like it's all my fault that you ended up in the break room. And she's like, it's okay. And then meanwhile in the outside world, Devin like looks up the people that she met, so like Gabby and her husband Angelo. And she discovers that Gabby's husband Angelo is a state senator who advocates for the severance procedure. So then she's like, oh my goodness. And then she closes the computer, and she and her husband Rickon decide to meet up with their lactation consultant. I didn't know that was a thing, but apparently it is. I guess if like a mom is struggling to like feed her baby. So they meet up with a lactation consultant. And the lactation consultant is Mrs. Selvig, Mark's neighbor, who is also Miss Cobell. So you're like, Jesus Christ. She's everywhere. Yeah, and it's like crazy because you're like, oh my god, now she's like in with like Mark's sister too. And also the child. Like, this is bad. So the viewer is just like going crazy. We're like, no, not Mrs. Selvig. And then meanwhile, we assume that like they're all off the shift, right? And then it gets crazier. So Dylan's innie suddenly wakes up, but he's not in the elevator. He's in like a closet of some kind. So he looks around and there's clothes everywhere. And he's like, where the hell am I? What? Where is this? It's like not the elevator. And it's his first time seeing anything other than like the hallways of the building, right? Or his like workroom. So he's like, where am I? And in front of him is Mr. Milchick, just like squatted like in front of him. And Mr. Milchick is like, hey Dylan G, we just need to ask you a few questions. And then Dylan starts freaking out. He's like, is this my house? Like, where am I? And then Mr. Milchick is like, I need you to return whatever you stole from O&D right now. Like, return the car to me. And then Dylan's like, okay, I hid it in the restroom. It's behind, like, this one part of the stall. And then Mr. Milchick is like, okay, thank you, Dylan. And then all of a sudden, a little kid runs into the closet and hugs Dylan. And is like, Dad! And then Dylan is like shocked and he's like, I have a kid? And he's like, is this my son? And he's like, wait, I have a kid? And then Mr. Milchick is like, okay, thanks Dylan. You need to go now. And then Mr. Milchick like pulls his son like off of him. And then he shuts down the like severance procedure. So then you see like Dylan's like outside self like come back. And then Dylan's outie is like, oh, are we done now? Did it work? Mr. Milchick is like, yeah, thank you for letting us question your innie. You know, we just had a few questions about work. And his outside self's like, oh, okay. And then he leaves and like hugs his son. And you're like, this is so messed up. Especially for like Dylan G, who like just found out he has children. And then he's like forced to go back to that place. Oh my god. Anyways, so then, the security team at Lumen is like narrowing down on whoever helped PD reintegrate. And they're like looking for her location, blah blah blah. And then Miss Cobell orders for there to be like a key card locked door to be installed at the entrance of MDR so that like no one can leave and then like no one can come in without the company department card or whatever. And then so outside Mark is on another date with like that lady that he went a date on with the first time. Whoop. And they go to a concert that Mark takes them to. And it's like a really punk rock band concert. Like they don't fit in there at all. But he brought his date there because one of the people in the band is Petey's daughter, like performing. So they performed a song and it's like a very like anti-Lumen song. And Mark just like starts thinking about like Petey, and then he speaks to Petey's daughter and he's like, hey, how are you holding up after your dad, you know? And then you kind of like pick up that the daughter blames Lumen for her dad dying because like obviously something like went terribly wrong, right, with the Severance thing. So then Mark and his date like go back and then they end up do they have sex? I think they do. Yeah, they do. Okay, so they do the thing together, but then in the middle of the night Mark like wakes up and he's like, I need to fix Petey's phone. So he goes to fix Petey's phone. I guess he's just like really affected by the whole thing. And the minute he puts the battery into the phone again, it starts to ring. So he picks up the phone and he's like, hello? And then a woman on the other end of the phone is like, what did Petey tell you? I need you to tell me everything that he told you. And then he's like, and he's like, who is this? I don't know. And she's like, what did he tell you? And Mark is like, I don't know. And then the lady on the phone is like, I need to meet up with you. Like, come meet me at this university. So then he ends up going because he's like, I need to know what the hell is going on. Which is also like so scary. If it was me, I would have been like, hell no. I need to take out the battery, go back to sleep. But Mark was like, okay, I need to find out what the hell's going on. So he goes to a university where the woman turns out to be, it's Ragabi, who is the ex-Lumen employee that helped PD reintegrate and the person they're looking for. And Ragabi asks Mark to follow him. And then the episode ends. Dun dun dun. How many episodes do we have left? Okay, we have like 3 more to recap. Yeah, I'll save it for Wednesday because the finale is a lot to like pick apart. But it's a lot of twists. I need to save this image though, or I'll have to make it all over again. But yeah, and that was the boss again. I know, right? I was like, it's gonna be freaking Miss Cobell again. God, the first time when they revealed she was his neighbor, I was like, hell no. And then the second time when they revealed she's like Devin's like nursing aide, I was like, come on. Like, enough. This is enough. This woman's a stalker. And you're also like, why is she so involved in Mark's life? You know? And it's like, because your first response is like, oh, then maybe she was just there to keep an eye on him in case like anything happened and he found out anything, right? But why would she do that way in the beginning? And also like, why not anyone else? You know? So it's like, there's definitely something that's like Mark focused. There's something deeply wrong. I can't believe Aki's leaving us on a cliffhanger. This is the way fiction should be consumed. Exactly. So then, yeah. Anyways, I'll end here for now. Cause it is getting past my stream end date. But yeah, I hope that like even after I like tell you guys what happens, you guys will like watch the show if that's your thing. Because a recap like does not do it like even 1% of justice. It's crazy with visuals. It's so good. But yeah. I hope that my writing can be told by someone giving a passionate presentation someday. Make it happen, Hime. I'll give the presentation. But yeah, thank you for joining me, guys. This was really impulsive, so thank you for even showing up to listen. Let's raid, oh my god, everyone's playing Monster Hunter. W! Let her yap. I'm way more hooked than I thought, to be honest. No, I completely get what you're saying. Because, like, I went into it mostly blind. I didn't even watch the trailer or, like, the opening sequence. But I went into it, like, completely blind, right? And even though like, I saw the title and then the, like, promotion images, and it, like, looks kind of creepy, but it didn't really hook me in. Like, I wasn't really interested in it as much as I thought I'd be. But I think that's what they market it as. Like, you're like, oh, I guess I'll just watch it, maybe. And I watched it because, like, a few people that I, like, trust their taste in was like, no, this is so good, you have to watch it. So I watched it, and then episode 1 is a bit slow. And I can understand why people, like, would be like, oh, this is too slow, but I really liked episode 1. It was, like, pretty unsettling. And when episode 2 happened, by the end of it, I was like, okay, I'm hooked. Like, this is really good. And then I just did not stop watching. This old man can yap! Yes! I don't know how to do old man voice, sorry. That was bad. Hi, Errol! Oh no, it's happening again. Don't worry, we're ending now. We're raiding into the 10th person playing Monster Hunter Wilds. Thank you for the hydrate. Which Monhun Wilds should I choose? Eeny, meeny, miny, mo. They're all playing it. Who to raid? Thank you for joining. I'm so glad people even want to hear. Thank you for stream, no worries. I do try to watch the stuff that you have about afterwards. Oh, Ryujin, I'm so glad to hear that. Yeah, I just like want to spread like stuff like this, cause there are people that are like would not be interested at all until like they heard a little bit about it and they're like, wait, like this is actually something I would like, which is what happened with like me and Severance. So I thought it'd be nice. Thank you, Lossless. While I decide which Monster Hunter Wilds person to raid. I guess we could just chat. Thank you for the cozy stream. I really enjoyed it. I'm glad. I feel like I like stumble on my words so much, so I hope it was like somewhat coherent. I added images just to help, but you know. Let's raid. Let's raid. I was like, should I just like not raid someone? Like send you guys to the cat channel again? Because I can't choose between a Monster Hunter Wilds people. Thanks, guy. My god. Even people I like not neutrals with are all playing. Boom, 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 boom. Text, go live right now. Just kidding. I saw you were gonna stream soon though, right? Unless I saw it wrong. I don't know. My like timeline refreshed. And then I was like, okay. Lost post. Wednesday? Alright. When you're streaming, I'll come in. Also, I'm starting to notice you have like impeccable timing. Cause I think last time you were here too, there was also like modding work to be done. And then like this time too, there just happened to be modding work for you to do. And usually my mods don't have to do anything. Oh my god. He has a mod sense. That's crazy. Once I set up my second monitor in OBS. Ah, I see. He's watching. Like Miss Cobell on her screen. He knows. Okay. After not doing my job for a year. It's working. The city needed me. Indeed. The city of the elderly. Yeah, he makes here to bully Mono. Okay, I think I'll raid yeah, I'll raid Cappuccino. Alright. I'd love to chat more, but I already have a missed call from someone who's probably rushing me. So I'll send you guys off now. I will continue the recap on Wednesday when Tex is streaming. I don't know what time you're streaming, so I don't want to be like, oh, I'll raid into you then, but we'll see. Or maybe you'll be streaming when I can watch. That'd be good. And then I can do my mod work. Except I don't know how to mod. So I guess I'll just sit there. But yeah, we'll continue Wednesday. We have 3 more episodes to recap for season 1. It's good. It will end really, really not fun. Exciting? Yeah, it will end exciting. So I'll see you guys Wednesday, and then Friday and Saturday I'll use for Yakuza. Just to make up for Wednesday. Just ban every single person. Text just has no one in chat, it's just me. Cause I banned everyone. That's so crazy. That's probably... Oh my god, that would happen in Severance. All the coworkers get fired. It's just Mark. Have a great rest of the day. You too! Good night to the people sleeping. Rest well. Bye bye. See you Wednesday. Bye.